At a nursing home, Zisun once thought she wouldn't live past 70. But now that she's reached that age, she remembers a wish from her past that she always wanted to yell out every day. That wish was to call her mom to come home early every time she went diving for abalone. 70 years ago, when Zisun was still a poor little girl, she had to watch her mom dive for abalone every day. Other people would come ashore and chat, but her mom kept diving, just to earn a few extra coins for the family. This made her feel helpless on the shore, yelling, wondering if her mom cared more about abalone than her own daughter. But luckily, back then, she wasn't waiting for her mom alone. She had her neighbor friend, Guan-seek. Everyone teased Zisun, saying, "Why do you care so much about your mother? Come look at the future fish shop owner, blushing and waiting for you." Zisun would then go kick Guan-seek's fish basket and scold him, asking why his cheeks were always so red. "Did someone punch you in the face or something?" This happened almost every day, like a routine. Back then, Zisun just wished her mom had given birth to an abalone instead of her, even though she was diving that long. It's not that Zisun's mother easily caught some abalones. There were people who came and asked for some to feed their family. She angrily said that there's no reason why she should suffer, and then have to be respectful to a dying old woman. Angry, she kicked away the fish baskets of the merchants and took Zisun home. Once they got home, Zisun kept complaining that her mom only cared about abalone and didn't care that she had won a prize for her riding. Her mom said those things couldn't get you abalone to sell, or even snails, so just go show them to the relatives. But it seemed like the family relationships in Zisun's house weren't very good. In that era, when a mother remarried, the eldest child like Zisun wouldn't be allowed to eat with the family and had to go to her maternal grandparents' house. Her mom told her to go eat at her grandparents' house. Zisun said she wasn't even allowed to touch a piece of fish there, so today she wanted to eat at home with her mom. Suddenly, her stepfather came home, making Zisun not want to eat anymore and go to her grandparents' house. It wasn't that Zisun's stepfather didn't want to take her, but the customs of this place didn't allow the daughter of a previous husband to live with them. And at her grandparents' house, Zisun was treated more like a servant than a grandchild. She always had to do the heavy chores like cooking rice and setting the table, while her uncle's son got to sit inside and study, even though he was pretty bad at it. Guan-seek brought some fish and was immediately questioned by the uncle about why he brought 6. The uncle said he only bought 5. Guan-seek knew this family wouldn't buy any for Zisun, so he deliberately said he bought 5 and got 1 free. But it was actually to save 1 for Zisun. While she was washing dishes, Zisun's mother arrived with an angry look and knocked over the dinner tray. "You people want croaker fish, right? Here's your croaker fish." She angrily scolded her own mother for treating her granddaughter like that. "Do you people want my older brother in heaven to get so angry he comes back to life?" After saying that, she conveniently kicked the freshly washed pots and took Zisun home. She asked her daughter what she liked about her. Zisun shyly said, "Because you're my mom. If you like that so much, then grow up quickly and give me 101 every day." It turned out that it was because of Zisun's award-winning essay that she had come to take her home. When she read that essay, she couldn't hold back her tears because, in her daughter's eyes, she was such a great mother. Even in storms, her mother went for abalone. Abalone made her daughter wait. She went diving and searching. "Mom, come up soon, where are you? I can't see you." This little heart is about to break from worrying about mom. "If that abalone is worth 101, I'll spend it to buy a day of my mom's." When she read these lines of poetry from her daughter, she couldn't hold back her tears. So she decided to go to her parents' house to bring Zisun home. She also warned her new husband that, if he didn't treat her daughter well, she would kick him out of the house. One day, Zisun came home crying because she had to be the vice class president again. Even though she got more votes than the class president, she should have been the class president, but because the other kid was richer, the teacher made her the vice president. Seeing her daughter complain like that, Wang Rai decided to work several jobs at once, and, while she was at it, asked to borrow a pearl necklace from that pregnant lady. It turned out she borrowed it to go to school and meet with the homeroom teacher. In the hallway, she saw her daughter's essay describing her mother framed in wood, while the first place essay was framed in gold. It was obvious that it was a bought and paid for prize by some rich kid. She went to complain and met the homeroom teacher. Her purpose in coming today was to give a gift to the teacher. Seeing Guang Rai dressed so elegantly and with a gift, the teacher asked if there was a special occasion. She said it was like the occasion when her daughter won second place when she should have won first, congratulating her daughter for being vice president when she should have been president, making the homeroom teacher feel a bit guilty. But in that old era, because of her daughter, Guang Rai still understood how society worked. The gift she gave contained a bribe, hoping the teacher would let her daughter become class president again and help her. She didn't forget to tell Zisun to listen to the teacher and study hard. Your mom is poor, but you are not. Don't be afraid. Just live a full life, because I've got your back. Hearing that, Zisun promised that when she grew up, she would repay her mother with a pearl necklace. This made her so happy that she ran to tell her husband. He asked if they would even live that long. The average life expectancy in Korea was 52. Guan-seek said, I will live a long time, past 60, 70, and live in luxury. It's okay to be a little poor now. I'll enjoy it later. She laughed, so sure. That was her dream, to live happily with her daughter. But fate wouldn't allow a woman who sacrificed so much for her family and children to enjoy happiness. She developed a lung disease that prevented her from diving. Zisun overheard her mother saying that even though she was sick, she still had to go diving. Angry, she took her mother's diving suit and burned it so she couldn't dive anymore. Sad, she left the house and met Guan-seek, who brought her food. This made her even sadder, and she took a rock to the sea and blamed it. Why won't you leave my mother alone? Why do you want to take her away? She's worked her whole life until death. She hasn't even been on an airplane, worn a pearl necklace, or eaten delicious food. Guan-seek took this opportunity to come over and give Zisun a bag of chicken. She thought he brought fish and said, You think bringing croaker fish will make me feel better? Are you feeding people just because you feel sorry for me? Guan-seek said that today he brought chicken, something she had never eaten before. Guan-seek really knew how to take care of his future wife from a young age. This really worked. Zisun asked, If you bring me good food, do you think I'll fall in love with you? Guan-seek said, Who knows if I'll love you? Zisun picked up a rock and said, If you don't marry me, you're dead meat. That evening, Guan-seek dressed nicely and went to her mother's house to ask her for a favor. She asked to borrow some abalone from her mother to take home to her daughter. Before her final days, Guan-seek still didn't want to buy anything fancy for herself. She just wanted Zisun to eat well before she passed away. Zisun noticed that her mother was being generous today, only letting her eat the good food. She asked if her mother was going somewhere. You can feed me tomorrow. But if she waited until tomorrow, she was worried that Zisun's two younger siblings would eat it all. She told her that later when she was gone, Zisun should leave this house. Go back to your grandmother and tell her I'm gone. Don't stay here and be a servant for your stepfather. Later, when you get married, at least you'll have your uncle to walk you down the aisle, instead of me. Otherwise, I'll be crying down there. Hearing these words, she didn't want to promise. She lost her appetite for abalone. But then her mother was gone, leaving Zisun alone to cope with a time when it was hard enough to feed herself, let alone her two younger siblings. Fortunately, her childhood friend Guan-seek still cared for Zisun, worried that she was hungry, and brought her food, just like her mother said. When it was just the three siblings, their stepfather used the excuse that he had to go to sea to earn a living for the family, and asked Zisun to take care of her two siblings at home, because if she went to her grandparents' house, she would be nothing more than a servant there. As a result, Zisun single-handedly tilled the entire field with her friend Guan-seek to plant cabbage. It could be said that Guan-seek didn't hesitate to do anything to take care of his future wife from a young age. One day, Zisun couldn't take it anymore and packed her bags to leave the house. To keep Zisun to take care of his two children, the stepfather coaxed her, saying he would pay all of Zisun's school fees, which softened her heart and made her stay temporarily. Later, when they grew up, Zisun always sat and sold goods with her childhood friend, Guan-seek. Although it said they were selling, Zisun hardly had to do anything but sit and study, while Guan-seek sold cabbage for her day after day, year after year, while Zisun sat beside him, studying. This made the fishmongers in the market jealous, saying, It looks like Guan-seek's mother will have to serve both her mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. This grandchild, who is smart at home, but a fool for his wife, is finally going to get his grandmother jealous. His grandmother overturned the stall and scolded Guan-seek. She said it 100 times, Don't let that girl set up shop next to you. Don't you know that a daughter inherits her mother's fate? Why would you marry a girl who has her mother's ghost hanging around her? She not only didn't let his grandmother scold her, but also talked back and challenged her. This made him step in to calm his grandmother down and ask her not to mess with Zisun's stall anymore. Even though his family hated Zisun, Guan-seek never once complained or disliked her. He still took care of her like a baby, from childhood to adulthood, always by her side. Zisun complained, It's not like just because we're always together, we're in love. It's not like I'm desperate to get married. Even if you offered, I wouldn't take you. I have to marry a man from Seoul. No way I'm marrying an island boy. Seeing Guan-seek not saying a word, Zisun said she'd rather talk to a rock. He got annoyed and told her to take her hand out of his pocket and go find some soul guy's pocket to stick it in. Why do you say you want to marry a city guy but keep putting your hand in my pocket? Her mouth said she wanted to marry a city guy, but her body honestly held Guan-seek's hand in the cabbage field. Not to mention, whenever they were together, he always brought food for the day. His plan to nurture his wife so she would depend on him was truly masterful. This guy is on the same level as Zhuge Liang. Zisun asked, "Why have you been bringing me food for the past 10 years? Do you pity me?" He got angry and said, "You think I've been taking care of you for 10 years out of pity?" Zisun said he only gave her food and never flirted. Guan-seek put his hand in his pocket and held her hand. Seeing her keep nagging, he silenced her with a kiss. "Do you want to kiss me? I won't live with my grandmother. I want to live with you." Seeing him confess, she still asked why he kissed her philtrum like that. He told her to stop complaining, one mouth babbling. He couldn't understand a thing. People can't talk back. And your lips are so glossy. You selfish person who always sticks your hand in other people's pockets. Zisun said it was lipstick. He asked, why? She said, for kissing. The two of them just threw themselves at each other, kissing passionately in this innocent and pure age. It was also the first time in their lives that they were both so proactive with each other, bringing the mood of a young girl who's gotten the person she likes home. Zisun also made her younger brother's jaw drop, but before she could be happy for long, she discovered her stepfather was cheating with another woman. Her stepfather, wanting a wife, found a virgin to be a stepmother for his children. She was also angry to learn that besides his biological children, he also had a child from his ex-wife, which made her unable to agree to this marriage. What Zisun's mother was worried about came true. She finally agreed to go to her grandmother's house. But her uncle kept complaining that if Zisun stayed there, she would eat all the food. He was only afraid that his son wouldn't get enough to eat. She had a husband who had been taking care of her since she was a child. He was worrying too much. The next day, when she went home, Zisun discovered that her stepfather's new wife had taken down her mother's portrait. This wife didn't want Zisun's mother's picture on her head every time she came home. And her stepfather and two younger siblings just sat and ate ice cream without intervening. Zisun demanded that her stepfather pay her school fees now, because he had promised that if she took care of the children, he would pay for her to go to university. He hadn't even paid her a single penny for the cabbage she had worked so hard to grow. The main reason was that his current wife was pregnant. Seeing her mother's words come true, Zisun went to her grandmother's house, and her uncle told her she should learn welding. They taught you a trade and even paid you. There was no better opportunity for her. The eldest granddaughter had to make this family proud so she could marry well. Hearing these words made Zisun feel like she was better off being a cow than a woman on Jeju Island. As for him wanting her to take care of her siblings, she wouldn't do it, because it wasn't her responsibility. She wouldn't live foolishly like a servant. That night, Zisun ran to where Guan-seek was selling goods, to ask him how many rooms his house had, and could he win against his grandmother? Guan-seek was the only support Zisun had now. She cried and lamented, "Why does it have to be an island boy? I want to go to university. I want to be a poet." Guan-seek, hearing these words, could no longer control himself and shouted, "Who planted this sad and hurt heart in me? Even if I can't give you all those things, if I have to do something, I'll do one thing for you." Zisun blamed him, asking why he couldn't give her everything. Why not go pick the moon and stars for her? Guan-seek wanted to, but he was a realist. He didn't speak flowery words, he just hugged Zisun and cried. As a result, that night, Guan-seek prepared to run away with Zisun. And she, in order to reclaim what was hers, went home and took all the clothes and jewelry, said goodbye to her two younger siblings, and then eloped with Guan-seek. Guan-seek was trembling. Zisun asked him if he had any regrets, because once they got on the ship and left Jeju, they wouldn't be able to come back. He wouldn't have a chance to redo his life. My life and your life, once they merge, we'll live and die together. If you're scared, you still have time to run. But he had made up his mind. In his 19 years of life, this was the most excited Guan-seek had ever felt. He kissed Zisun as a sign of agreement to elope. Hearing the ship's horn, the two of them grabbed their belongings and ran straight to the harbor. Boarding the ship, a sailor saw these two sitting anxiously in a corner and asked if they were from North Korea or young people running away from home. Guan-seek tried to bribe him, but Zisun stood up and shouted, "We're husband and wife. How can teenagers get married? How? Are you going to report us to the authorities? If you're so brave, throw us into the sea." Guan-seek, hearing her say they were husband and wife, froze for a moment. Arriving in Busan, they went to sell their jewelry, but it was considered stolen goods, so they couldn't sell it for money. Luckily, an inn let them stay for one night and pay later, which eased their difficulties a bit. Upstairs in the room, Zisun asked Guan-seek to guess why she married him. Seeing that he couldn't guess, Zisun said it was because he looked like a reinforced concrete pillar. They might be hungry and thirsty, but she knew Guan-seek wouldn't make her sad. So that was the reason she chose Guan-seek as her husband. Besides that, Guan-seek was also handsome and gallant. Seeing Guan-seek pull the blanket away from her, she said they were husband and wife. As a virgin with no experience, he shyly sat looking around, not knowing what to do. At home, Zisun's stepmother, even though all her jewelry was taken, was still smiling, making her stepfather wonder why she wasn't angry that Zisun had taken her things. Min-oh said that at Guan-seek's house, Zisun had also stolen their son and the golden toad. The old lady of that house almost fainted. They thought this stepmother was hateful, but she actually had no bad intentions towards Zisun. She even found Zisun romantic because she and Guan-seek were like a couple on the run. Suddenly, Guan-seek's family arrived, and the mother asked the stepfather and his wife if they knew Zisun's whereabouts, what color clothes she was wearing when she left the house. Min-oh didn't want to reveal anything, so she just said that from here to the beginning of the market, there were so many clothing stores with similar clothes. Even if she wanted to find her now, she wouldn't be able to. Back to the newlyweds, the innkeeper treated them to a free bottle of soju and a bowl of noodles. She said that Busan was very hospitable. After you eat and sleep on this warm floor, you'll feel as soft as butter on a hot pan. Guan-seek was so shy that he changed color like a chameleon. The next morning, when he woke up, Guan-seek discovered that their luggage was gone. He and Zisun rushed down to ask the innkeeper, but they both denied it, saying that they hadn't brought any luggage. They were lucky they hadn't reported them to the police. Zisun angrily shouted, "You two stole it. You gave us alcohol and food. If we didn't have money, why would you do that?" The husband suddenly revealed a slip-up when he threatened to call the police so that the two children's mother from Jeju could come here. Guan-seek asked the innkeeper how he knew they were from Jeju Island. It was these two innkeepers who had rummaged through their belongings and seen the ferry tickets, revealing that Zisun and Guan-seek were from Jeju. The wife, seeing that things weren't going well, said, "I'll let this go, you two go. I'll pretend nothing happened." Sitting outside the inn, the two were racking their brains when another guest came to rent a room, so they decided to break into the inn at night. First, they told the guest not to turn off the lights when she went to sleep. Waiting for the innkeepers to fall asleep, Zisun told Guan-seek to prioritize taking the golden toad and her mother's portrait. "If you can't find it, then just grab the innkeeper's cash box and let's go." Guan-seek ate while listening anxiously, but they had no way out, so he had to force himself to eat a few bites to get the strength to get their stuff back. After searching for a while, Guan-seek found the cash box. Zisun saw her hairpin and tried to get it back. This woke up the innkeeper's child. The two of them ran away, but Zisun was caught by the innkeeper's wife, who grabbed her by the throat. The husband grabbed a mop as a weapon, threatening to keep Guan-seek away. Seeing his girlfriend lying there being tormented, Guan-seek decided to throw the cash box aside, took a running start, and threw a thunderous punch. As a result, both of them were arrested and discovered by Guan-seek's mother. She asked where her golden toad was. As for the thieving innkeeper, she also took the jewelry she had stolen from Zisun and went to sell it. But what she didn't expect was Guan-seek's mother. Knowing that she was the thief, his mother stood at her house and disrupted her business, not letting her collect money from anyone. Now, to get justice for her son, instead of being robbed, she would make the thieves go crazy. She said she would camp out here every day until she got her golden frog back. At this point, the old innkeeper couldn't take it anymore and said, "I didn't take any golden frog of yours. Now it's a golden frog turned into a golden toad? I have all the evidence." The words of this old thief became the evidence for the police to take her to the station. The two women were grabbing each other's hair and slapping each other when the police entered, giving the thief a taste of jail brand silver. The husband saw the police and was so scared that he let his wife get arrested. The innkeeper was arrested. She didn't forget to demand that Guan-seek and Zisun pay for the fan. They broke, but how could she get it? Seeing Guan-seek's mother come out, she didn't look angry, but rather seemed gloating after getting her money and belongings back. After this incident, Zisun was expelled from school for seducing someone else's son to run away. Helpless, she could only take her books and burn them because she couldn't go to school anymore. Back home, she was also scolded by her uncle. "Now that you can't even finish middle school, what will you do? You can't even work in a factory. And what about that deadbeat? That deadbeat over here was being scolded by his father. Because of you, your grandmother is lying sick over there." Guan-seek didn't care and said he would marry Zisun. which made his sick grandmother wake up and throw a matchbox at Guan-seek. His father didn't want Guan-seek to marry a girl who hadn't even finished middle school into this house. As for Guan-seek's uncle, he was angry and said, "Now you go to her house and beg. Go to her house and hope to be Guan-seek's future wife." Now everyone on this island knows about Zae-sun's inappropriate relationship. Her uncle dared anyone to marry Zae-sun now. Suddenly, Zae-sun's future husband appeared and asked, "I was only suspended. Why was she expelled?" Zae-sun's grandmother blamed him for ruining her life, and he didn't even know it. And at Guan-seek's house, his grandmother, wanting to curse Zae-sun to disappear, performed some old-fashioned rituals to break the spell, so her grandson would stop being obsessed with Zae-sun. She said she would grab that girl and beat her and pinch her, and conveniently spit to complete the exorcism. Guan-seek's mother said that she had done the same to her back then, and it didn't stop her and her son from getting together. If you want to drive someone away, don't use a stick, use a worm to lure the chicken. The next day, Guan-seek's mother went to see Zae-sun and found her locked in a shed, the door locked to prevent her from escaping. Seeing Zae-sun so haggard, she said that Guan-seek couldn't eat anything either. But today she came not to gossip, but to advise Zae-sun that it was best if she didn't enter their house, if she didn't want to be looked down on. But while she was here, Zae-sun wanted to ask Guan-seek's mother something. Outside, Zae-sun's uncle said he wouldn't let the two of them get married. His family didn't have enough money for a wedding, so even if they got married, it wouldn't be happy. Guan-seek said it was okay. Even if his uncle's house didn't have money, he wouldn't let her go hungry. But Zae-sun's uncle was afraid of the shamans like Guan-seek's family, not to mention that she looked down on Zae-sun because she was an orphan, always labeled with the stigma of her widowed mother. On this island, people only believed in the Dragon King and the shamans. No one ever believed in gods or Buddhas. Guan-seek wasn't afraid and said that if they got married, Zae-sun would live with him, not his grandmother, and he guaranteed he wouldn't let her touch Zae-sun, not even a single hair. After hearing this, Zae-sun came out and said, "Why do you have to take responsibility for me? Do you think I'm a discounted, spoiled fish, buying me out of pity? You think you're the only one I can marry?" Zae-sun declared that she would marry a man who is richer, more handsome, and from a better family than Guan-seek's. She would die before marrying this idiot. As a result, Zae-sun went on a blind date with a man who had been married once before, a businessman with one child, but divorced. Knowing that Zae-sun had been ostracized by the villagers on Jeju Island for taking her boyfriend to Seoul, he said he didn't care about her past, but kept subtly asking if she was a virgin. The whole time, Zae-sun wasn't in the mood to reveal anything. The matchmaker kept talking about his family background, but Zae-sun didn't care at all. She just thought that her mother in heaven must be crying, because she was lost. That evening, the neighboring fisherman who had witnessed the two children falling in love on the street also came to Guan-seek's house. They scolded Guan-seek's grandmother for being so cruel as to force Zae-sun to become the second wife of another man. "We know you're a shaman, but you have no right to punish people in the name of rituals." The whole crowd challenged that if Zae-sun married that 30-year-old man, they would no longer believe in the Dragon King or her magic. Coincidentally, Guan-seek had just returned and heard that Zae-sun was getting married. He decided to bring all the fish to Zae-sun's house as a wedding gift. He blamed the two of them, asking if they were really blood relatives. Abandoning their own flesh and blood like that? He cried and blamed his uncle for treating Zae-sun like discarded trash. "She's smart, she talks well, and she's beautiful. Why? You treat her worse than I do, so why not marry her off to me?" Meanwhile, Zae-sun, on her way home, was constantly being asked by the pervert about what she and Guan-seek had done in Busan, whether they were caught after just one day or several days. She couldn't take it anymore and snapped back. "What about you? Did you get divorced right after you got married? Or did it take some time?" "I absolutely hate losers." The jerk said, "You're so difficult, and that guy still likes you?" Guan-seek appeared from Zae-sun's house and said, "That's right." He came over and tried to pull Zae-sun away, but she didn't want to go. She asked where they would go. "Do you have anywhere else to go together?" They were being affectionate when that guy butted in, and Guan-seek told him to shut up. He pulled Zae-sun to a field and told her to marry him. She just needed to wear the ring, and it would be done. But she didn't want to. She said, "Are we going to run away again? Steal again? If I marry someone else, I'll have money, just 2 kids. Why? Why am I the only one who has to suffer these sins? Why am I always the one who gets blamed? The one who goes to university? The one who becomes a poet? It's all nonsense. Someone who doesn't finish middle school can't even become a welder." Guan-seek said he would take full responsibility. How many more times did he have to say it for Zae-sun to understand? Zae-sun said, Are you going to keep taking care of me like you did when I was 10, 10, 10? With your charity fish? Do you think I'm a beggar? But back then, they were only 10 years old. What else could a boy like Guan-seek do for her? Now he could do everything, whether it was working on a ship or working as a construction worker. Guan-seek said he could do it all, but Zi-sun didn't want to. She threw the ring in front of Guan-seek. If I live with you, I'll go through ups and downs. I'm tired of struggling in this place that hates me. If I marry you, will I be treated badly again? But if I marry that person, I won't have to worry about anyone cursing me, including you. Zi-sun begged Guan-seek to let go. Please give the life of a person who has always suffered a way to survive. Only then can I live in peace. At the age of 18, Zi-sun looked at her first love and knew that they might never see each other again. But the next day, she was the one who went to look for the ring she had thrown away the day before. Back in the present, when Zi-sun's daughter heard this story, she said she would never live like her mother. Zi-sun told her daughter to keep saying never, because that year she also declared that she would never marry a local. Her daughter asked Zi-sun if she regretted it at all. She said, "Regret what? If I hadn't met your father, how would you be here now?" But she asked as Zi-sun, not as her mother now. Zi-sun said that if it were Zi-sun of that year, she would have forever melted into the spring of that year. In that year, when Guan-seek was on the ship preparing to go to Seoul to study, it turned out that before, when Zi-sun asked Guan-seek's mother a question, it was, "Isn't Guan-seek one of the 4 best on Jeju Island? Didn't he almost win a medal?" His mother said that he wasn't just 4th, he was probably on par with the 3rd or 2nd place. Zi-sun never knew that Guan-seek, who had a foolish appearance and always followed her around, was so talented. As Guan-seek's mother, she begged Zi-sun to let her son go, because if Zi-sun was by his side, Guan-seek would lose everything he had. That was the reason why Zi-sun lied and said she would marry that rich husband. When the ship set sail, the teacher brought beer to celebrate with Guan-seek, but he didn't care and only hoped that Zi-sun would come find him. The teacher said that no student had ever run 100 laps of the field when he told them to, only him, so he should train hard to win the gold medal. Guan-seek said it wasn't real gold. The reason he ran 100 laps was that he ran for Zi-sun. He wasn't crazy enough to do it otherwise. Well, he was crazy in love, rather. He also said he hated sports. No matter how hard he tried, he would only be 4th. If it weren't for Zi-sun, he wouldn't even dream of doing it. At the wedding dress shop, the pervert said that because Zi-sun was open-minded, he would overlook the fact that she and Guan-seek had run off together in front of him. Zi-sun said that she wasn't marrying him for money or for love, but just because she had nowhere else to go. The pervert was suddenly surprised because he couldn't believe what he had just heard. She said that she'd rather roll in dog poop than marry him, making the pervert think he was dog poop. Zi-sun even said that he could let her be a maid. She would work hard, but he just wanted a docile, obedient wife who would take care of his children and give him 3 kids. Zi-sun looked at the clock, saw that it was time for Guan-seek to board the ship and leave Jeju, and she decided she didn't want to marry this guy who only cared about virginity anymore and ran after the call of her love. If she hadn't run that day, she probably would have really missed Guan-seek. Arriving at the pier, seeing Zi-sun running after the ship made everyone there surprised. When Guan-seek thought that he would never see Zi-sun again, suddenly the strap of the bag he was carrying broke. He was about to pick it up when Zi-sun's shout faintly passed through his ears. When he realized that Zi-sun was coming to find him, Guan-seek immediately ran to find the captain and begged him to turn the ship around. But it was in vain. Seeing Guan-seek's desperate face, the teacher stopped him and said, "If you leave, your life will be ruined, you idiot." Seeing Zi-sun's suffering, Guan-seek's family also left in peace. Suddenly, everyone noticed that someone had just fallen off the ship. Guan-seek's sister said, "Mom, he just fell into the sea." Everyone threw lifebuoys to save Guan-seek. It seemed like everything was over. Guan-seek seemed to be drowning, but unexpectedly, people couldn't believe their eyes and asked, "Is that a whale?" It wasn't a whale, but Guan-seek, with the power of love burning brightly within him. Guan-seek swam so fast that people thought he was the world's #1 athlete. Everyone shouted, "Go, brother, go!" Guan-seek's grandmother blamed his mother for teaching him to swim. The fishmongers who had previously said that it would be a waste if Guan-seek didn't become a North Korean spy. It could be said that for love, Guan-seek could do anything, even pick the stars from the sky for Zi-sun. The two hugged each other tightly, as if there had never been a separation. The fishmongers didn't forget to scold Guan-seek's family. How could you stop Romeo and Juliet? Even the heavens above tried to stop them, but couldn't. Taking advantage of the opportunity, all the women teased Guan-seek's grandmother, making her very angry but unable to do anything. His sister from that year was now grown up and was close to Zisun's daughter. She was about to reveal the incident of the two of them running away to Busan when Zisun shut her up, saying if she said more, she would call her brother. But Guan-seek's sister's mouth went too far. She told Yu-young that after they got married, she was born 8 months later. It turned out that on the night at the inn in Busan, the two of them, after getting drunk, got together. That's how Gu-young came to be. Guan-seek also appeared and shut his sister's mouth to send her home, coming to someone's house and eating a whole fried chicken, and still going around telling tales. In that year, Guan-seek chose to give up going to school to marry Zisun. The two of them had a cute daughter, Yu-young of the present. Becoming a professional athlete and winning a gold medal was not as precious as Guan-seek's family. He didn't regret the empty titles. He only cared about Zisun and his baby girl, who was more precious than a gold medal. Later, when she went back to clean the house in the countryside, Zisun saw scenes of her mother everywhere. When she became a mother, she wanted her mother to be able to witness her grow up more in the present. Seeing Zisun cleaning in the yard, her stepmother also appeared and asked how she was. Seeing Zisun preparing a lot of things for her two younger siblings, Aunt Minho asked her why she had to prepare for those kids. They had hands and feet. Even though she was a bit foul-mouthed, when she saw Zisun helping her change her child's diaper, she also said, "If you ever get bullied by those old people in Guan-seek's family, just call. Your aunt is a good listener." Not a first child or a biological child, but at least she was once a member of the family and took care of their younger sibling. So Aunt Minho didn't dislike Zisun very much. She even gave Zisun a bicycle and said, "I respect you very much. Now that I live in this house, I understand. Your fate is not to be a servant, just taking care of people like a servant. Good people will reap good rewards." Hearing that, Zisun asked her aunt to take care of her younger siblings so they could go to university. Her aunt told Zisun not to worry. "They're my children, so I can take care of them." At Guan-seek's house, Jai-oh kept complaining about Zisun bringing cabbage to their house. It was like this house was feeding thieves. Suddenly, Zisun brought a sack of goods to the house, surprising Guan-seek's mother. When they opened it, there were so many fabrics and cosmetics inside. She had just been calling her a thief for stealing some corn, but now that she saw this pile, no one hid it faster than her. Seeing the shirt from the night of their first time together, Guan-seek took it and hid it like a treasure. That night, Zisun came home exhausted and complained to Guan-seek. Every time she was tired like this, the only thing she needed was for him to hug her. Every day was the same. Zisun always had to wake up early to cook for the whole family. Not to mention the grandma also sprinkled red beans while scolding and cursing. Even though every day was the same tiring cycle, Guan-seek never left her alone. No matter how tired they were, just looking at each other made all the fatigue disappear. Zisun wanted her daughter to do everything she had never been able to try, so she spent all her time doing housework and cooking, just so the girl could be free. Later, when she grew up, Zisun's daughter also had a boyfriend and met his mother, but she was a woman who loved traditions, preferring girls who were docile, kind, and easily molded. She wanted Gu-young, if she married Zhongbom, to stay home and be a housewife to take care of her son, but Gu-young couldn't. Since she was little, her mother had let her live freely, not restricted by anything. She longed to work to earn a lot of money and build a family, rather than being restricted by her in-laws, so she didn't hesitate to reply, "You probably aren't the kind of person who's easily molded either. I think you're pretty stubborn too. I guess I'm not the hothouse flower type you're talking about." After that meal, Gu-young went home and broke up with her boyfriend without thinking twice. He thought he could be king just because he had a little money. Seeing her daughter upset, Zisun advised that if work was too tiring, she could quit. But the girl didn't want to have a life of poverty like her mother. Zisun said that although they were poor, she was very happy during that time. In that year, when Gu-young was taken by her grandmother for a ritual, Zisun didn't want her daughter to be like her mother, struggling to dive into the sea just to feed this old-fashioned family. She decided to overturn the offering table and declared that Gu-young would not support any relatives. Guan-seek's mother was angry and slapped her, and the grandma kept scattering red beans to ward off evil. Coincidentally, Guan-seek had just come home and saw his grandmother scattering red beans on his wife. Not to mention that his wife had been hit, which led him to make a decision. His whole family would leave and rent a separate room in the next village. Although they weren't well off at the time, Guan-seek always tried his best for his wife and children, always preparing the most complete meals. Suddenly, there was a call from the landlord. Thinking he had come to ask for rent, Guan-seek was about to ask for an extension, when he said that a person with the surname Jian had paid the rent 3 months in advance for the family. After saying that, he left 2 pieces of meat and said, "If you keep paying the rent on time, I'll give you more things." That night, the two lay together but couldn't figure out who had helped them pay 3 months' rent. They couldn't figure it out, so they turned off the lights and went to sleep. Every night they went to sleep at 9 o'clock, which made the landlord frustrated every time he brought things over. It was so difficult to be a good person these days. As a result, Zasun had good news. She was pregnant, which made the fishmongers at the market from before come and take care of her like royalty. Although she wasn't liked by her mother-in-law and grandmother-in-law, at least she had kind neighbors who were always willing to share and help her. When Guan-seek came home, Zasun saw that his hand was injured and was very worried. She blamed him for working so hard, even with a broken hand. She scolded him like that, but Zasun was just worried about her husband. Later on, Guan-seek started going to bed earlier and earlier every day. Every time Zasun brought food up to eat and drink, he was always sleeping, and the wounds on his body kept increasing, until Zasun pulled up his sleeves and pants and discovered that he seemed to have been abused. From then on, she stopped nagging her husband. Instead, she made breakfast early in the morning and wished Guan-seek a safe trip, saying that she and her child would wait for him at home. Everyone who saw this scene wanted to have a beautiful love like Zasun and Guan-seek. Zasun also decided to make it easier for her husband to live. She went to see the captain's wife to give her a gift, hoping that she would persuade her husband to be easier on Guan-seek. But when she saw that his wife was also being beaten, Zasun realized that begging was useless. So Zasun advised her, "Ma'am, what's wrong is wrong. No matter how ironic life is, you have to live for yourself." After saying that, Zasun took the gifts she had brought. On the other hand, it turned out that the captain who always beat Guan-seek was the pervert who couldn't marry Zasun. He was so bitter that he always tormented Guan-seek, but this time, when he insulted Zasun, he couldn't take it anymore and decided to quit his job here. But when the pervert threatened him, "If you don't work, what will your wife and children eat? You're so obsessed with your wife." After saying that, he kicked Guan-seek in the leg. "You can mess with everyone, but don't mess with Zasun's husband." Although she was pregnant, Zasun threw away the gift and rushed to pull Guan-seek away, and conveniently kicked the pervert for fun, declaring, "My husband is quitting his job here. He's not working for a piece of garbage like you anymore." Because of that time, Zasun felt even more sorry for Guan-seek. After quitting his job on Captain Sang-gil's boat, Guan-seek found it really hard to get work because the economy was tough. Seeing this, Mrs. Gongjia suggested to Zasun that maybe she should tell Guan-seek to go work on Halasan Mountain. She heard they were building a road there. Whether it's at sea or at a construction site, as long as he's making money, it's fine. Even though she's pregnant, Zasun still tried to go out to sea so she could sell fish with the neighbors and bring in some money for the family. She complained to the neighbor ladies about why Guan-seek always had to be first in line when working a job, which made Zasun feel terrible. Since leaving the fishing boat, Guan-seek hadn't told her anything. Her aunt said, of course, how could he like it? A sailor who can't see the sea, how can he live? While they were talking, Guan-seek came to pick up Zasun. Seeing that he was hurt again, Zasun was really worried, but Guan-seek said he was okay. Any new job, you always have to learn the ropes. Seeing Guan-seek like that made Zasun feel heartbroken too. A hardworking person like Guan-seek, if he can't work, he'll eventually feel like life is really hard and he's helpless. But that didn't mean he forgot to help his wife with other little things. But seeing Guan-seek try so hard until he was exhausted, Zasun felt his shoulders and neck were even more pitiful than the leftover cabbage leaves she picked so the family could have a meal. One day, Zasun decided to get up early with Guan-seek so she could comfort him a little. A fish seller since he was 9, he should get some rest, too. He deserves to be happy. But a breadwinner like Guan-seek couldn't rest and didn't want to rest. Behind him were his wife and child, plus a baby on the way, if he wants to feel happy. Maybe Guan-seek just needed a job that could support the 4 members of his family, and he'd be satisfied. Guan-seek said if he worked one day, the family could live another day. And working even one day wasn't easy for Guan-seek. The rice at home was also gone. This made Zasun remember her mother used to use some abalone to trade for rice so they had something to eat. As a result, Zasun had to go to her grandmother's house to ask her for some rice to cook. But she couldn't say a word. She could only silently sob, which made her uncle angry. If you come to borrow money, what's there to be ashamed of? Why come all this way and not say a word? Her grandmother had just asked how she was when her uncle cut her off again. Does this family have any land left to sell for her? The uncle kept talking about the hardships at this grandmother's house. with the sole purpose of letting his own son inherit everything and not giving Z-sun a single penny. Z-sun could still only sob that day. That night, Z-sun confided in Guan-seek that she just wanted to get old quickly. Every day having to face these difficulties made Z-sun feel like her family was so unlucky. Guan-seek didn't want his wife to worry. He also said that the label of adult, they were all just pretending to be adults. Z-sun kept complaining about why she had to be a mother, being a wife or a grown-up. It's all so hard. No matter how much she complained, just having Guan-seek by her side made Z-sun feel like she was a little baby again. A child sleeping in her mother's arms being comforted. Being comforted by Guan-seek made Z-sun feel like life was suddenly more peaceful. Suddenly, Z-sun's grandmother came to visit the family in the middle of the night. She thought her grandmother came to give her a gold ring to get by. Unexpectedly, inside the pocket was the savings book that her grandmother had been saving for Z-sun for years. Her grandmother told her to take this book and buy a boat, and to keep it quiet. If anyone asked where the money came from, say she won the lottery. Look at the amount of money on the book. Z-sun asked if her grandma stole. Her thrifty heart was mistaken by the grandkid as thief. This was the money she made selling rice and soup before the evacuation. But she had to hide it, because if it got out, her son would dig up the whole house, and there would be nothing left. Moreover, it was because Z-sun's mother had threatened her. When she was 10 years old, Wang Rai dressed nicely and came to see her mother and invited her to a place. That was the portrait studio for funeral photos. Knowing that she wouldn't live much longer, Wang Rai came here early. She asked her mother a favor. I'm going to join my husband in the afterlife soon. While you're here, please take care of my husband's daughter. Please take care of Z-sun, like you would take care of Hang Yu. She also knew that today, her daughter-in-law Guang Rai came here to ask her to take care of her child. How could a grandmother ignore the grandchild her own daughter-in-law gave birth to? Guang Rai said if one day Z-sun came to find her mother, she just hoped her mother could help her just once. And then Z-sun's mother also took a funeral portrait and felt some relief before she passed away. Back in the present, Z-sun's grandmother reminded her to just take this money and live. She would consider it as giving it to her son. The following week, Z-sun and her husband used that money to buy their own boat. Guan-seek's mother called all the people on the island to celebrate her son buying a boat. Everyone wished for the boat to always float, but Guan-seek's mother kept cheering for Captain Guan-seek, even though it wasn't her money. But she was hyping everyone up, as if the neighbors didn't know this was her son's boat. Z-sun wouldn't be outdone, and went up to her mother-in-law. This is the money I put up for Guan-seek. It's not from your family. It was thanks to my grandmother that I could buy it for Guan-seek. She finally stopped boasting and said, "That's right, you're a blessing, okay?" The neighbor ladies heard and added a few sentences. "If she's a blessing, you should put her on your head like this." Z-sun said she was a truly filial daughter-in-law. Seeing his son happily looking at Z-sun like that, his father asked, "You like it that much?" How could he not like it? Guang Rai said Z-sun was the funniest person in the world. While happily celebrating with the neighbors, Z-sun suddenly stopped. Her daughter Yu-young said, "Mommy, you peed my pants." Wang Rai quickly dumped everything out of the ox cart and pulled Z-sun to the nurse. It's true that too much happiness can easily lead to labor, but having 2 kids wasn't enough. According to the promise they made years ago, Z-sun got pregnant with a 3rd child. Seeing Z-sun carrying her 3rd child made Guang Rai jealous, and she asked, "Are you planning to continue not performing any ancestral rites?" Z-sun is currently forbidden by Guang Rai from doing any work, so she said, "I can only listen to my husband. If my husband gets angry, I'm really scared. It's true that only a patriarchal man can take care of me." Meg-chan heard that and said, "My granddaughter-in-law is definitely better than my daughter-in-law. If I'm a rabbit and she's a snake, then Z-sun is a tiger." Hearing herself compared to a snake, Guan-seek's mother said, "Why didn't you choose a panda for yourself?" Meg-chan turned around and said, "Why don't you keep talking?" Suddenly, Guang Rai came home and saw his mother's face was upset. He asked, "What did you do to Z-sun?" She was frustrated and said, "What about me?" It's true that she was alone against the whole in-law family. Her son sided with his wife, and her husband didn't care. Z-sun was living the good life. That night, Guang Rai took a bunch of seafood to the landlord's house to thank him. Because the 2 of them had helped them survive until now, Z-sun was curious why they were packing today. Guang Rai then took her to a familiar place. It was the place where her mother's old house was, and this was also the place with the most memories with her mother when Z-sun was little. Every time she had something new or won an award, Z-sun would bring it to show her mother first. Her mother was always cheerful when Z-sun came. Guang Ri said he still remembered every time she came here. She would say she could smell the delicious food her mother cooked. Zisun burst into tears and said, "Even abalone and crabs have their own homes. Only I don't have a home. From my mother's house, my grandmother's house, to my stepfather's house. None of them are mine." But everything she lacked, Guang Rai had made up for it all. Zisun couldn't contain her joy because for the first time, she had something that was called hers. For her, he could do anything. Even though the house was tiny, Zisun felt like it was a palace. After a while, the family became more well-off. Wang Ri invited Zisun to take a picture as a memento because the family had overcome the difficult period, marking a milestone in their lives. One night, Zisun dreamed that her mother came back and helped her clean the house. She also kept reminding her that the neighbor had a truck. If the persimmon tree leaned over to her house, she would eat them all, dear. But she kept repeating that the neighbor had a truck. Suddenly, Zisun woke up, suddenly feeling a pain in her stomach. So she woke her daughter up to go call the neighbor. It turned out that her mother came back in a dream because she knew she was about to give birth to her third child. The neighbor lady had to be said to drive better than any of the city boys. So the small family now had 5 people. Guan-seek's grandmother couldn't help but praise the son as a golden grandchild, unlike a certain daughter-in-law. Guan-seek's mother heard that and said, "Before, you cursed Zisun for not having a son." Guan-seek's grandmother was still praising. If she was foretold by her ancestors in a dream, then the boy is good luck. Guan-seek's mother teased again, but someone once said Zisun had her mother's ghost following her. Mek-chan was so angry that she kicked away the pile of towels that Guan-seek's mother had just folded. Suddenly outside, the neighbor ladies who were fishing came back and reported good news. Guan-seek's boat was full of fish again. The baby was truly a blessing for this family. Ever since he was born, every time the fish came, Zisun then said, "I'm the real blessing. Thanks to me, this family is so prosperous." It's undeniable that she is good at making babies. The next day at the community center, everyone was electing a village chief. But in reality, Sang-gil had already bribed everyone. He asked if anyone objected to him being the village chief. Mrs. Chung-soo said, "There's no one else running, so there's no need for voting or elections. If there was, it would be Zisun." But Zisun says she does not accept petty people. She said, "If you're fighting with a dog, a cow will win hands down, so I'm yielding to you." Everyone was saying maybe Zisun should be the deputy chief. Remember to vote so she can beat that guy who's worried about losing his position. So Zisun, without needing to do anything fancy, was nominated as deputy chief. The first thing she did after taking office was to get rid of all the social evils like dance halls and prostitution. While inspecting that dance hall, Zisun suddenly discovered Sang-gil's wife and children inside. She quickly locked the door and asked why the lady was here. Worried that the village chief's wife would be discovered, Zisun helped her escape through the back of the restroom. But unfortunately, she tripped and fell. Sang-gil saw someone was escaping. He immediately ordered the press to chase after them. But Zisun blocked him. "I'll handle this one." In fact, Zisun just wanted to protect her. That night, Zisun took her children to visit Guan-seek. He was repainting the boat's sign and wanted his daughter to write the new sign for the boat. But remembering her mother's words, the eldest daughter in the family should never write on the boat. So Zisun tried to stop him. Guan-seek said he didn't believe in superstitions or gods. His 3 children and her were his gods. Hearing these words, Zisun also boldly stepped onto the boat and wrote the new sign for Guan-seek's boat. For the first time out at sea, Zisun couldn't help but start cursing the Dragon King under the sea. "If you don't bring a lot of fish to my house, I've wasted so much rice offering to you. You should know better and not make it hard for my husband. Otherwise, I won't offer a single grain of rice." Now, with a house, a boat, and a handsome husband, Zisun couldn't be happier. When she's with Guan-seek, she could even give birth to a football team. Seeing Zisun so happy, Guan-seek secretly kissed her, and then a long one as proof of his love. On a stormy day, when only Zisun and her 2 children were at home, Dongman, after eating, craved candy. He went to get some candy to eat, but because the candy box was too high, he could only knock the box down, which made Zisun panic. "I told you to finish your rice before you can have candy." Little Dongman just wanted his mother to hug him and didn't want candy anymore. Suddenly, a classmate of Gu Yong's came to tell Zisun that she was in an accident. Zisun immediately ignored her crying child and went to see her daughter. She asked her neighbor to watch her 2 children, but she didn't know that the neighbor was just dreaming and didn't know anything. When the storm came, Zisun took Gu Yong home and found her neighbor was sleeping. Zisun went inside to ask and found out that the neighbor had never come over to watch her 2 children. Zisun worriedly rushed home, but couldn't find either of her children anywhere. Her 2 children had gone missing in the storm. Luckily, Mrs. Chung Su and Yang Yin found the second child and brought him back. Mrs. Chung Su told her to remember to pay her for the seaweed because she found her grandson on this dike. Zisun quickly asked Unman, and he just said Dongman was at home. Realizing something was wrong, Zisun immediately went with the neighbors to look for her third child. During the storm, Guan-seek was diligently helping the villagers build a seawall. When he received news that his son was missing, he immediately abandoned his work and ran to find Dongman. But besides him, almost all the people of the entire island went to look for the boy. No matter how big the storm was, even the 80-year-old landlords helped in the search. At this time, Mrs. Gongjia came to Zisun and called Zisun. Her voice choked and she couldn't speak. Zisun kept asking where Dongman was. How was Dongman? But Mrs. Gongjia could only remain silent when the villagers found him. Little Dongman was just a boy lying in Zisun's arms. He didn't survive when they found him. Seeing his wife and son lying cold in Zisun's arms, Guan-seek's strong wall collapsed for the first time. Dongman had passed away. And that day, Guan-seek's cries could be said to have drowned out the sound of the waves crashing on the shore. For the first time in his life, a strong man like Guan-seek also had to cry. After this, Zisun regretted that she had left her son that day without hugging him. If only she had been home at that time, it would have been so much better. And during that entire mourning period, no one in Guan-seek's family dared to blame Zisun. Everyone knew that a person who loses a child has more tears than the ocean. Day after day, Zisun could only lie on the ground without wanting to do anything, until one day, she heard her son Unman making sugar candy with his friends outside. Zisun went to ask him, but Unman didn't answer a word. As for Guan-seek, he was just like Zisun. He was also just dazed for days after Dongman died, until he noticed Gu Yong's backpack was wet. When he took out the things in his daughter's backpack, he asked why she got high grades but never showed off. Coincidentally, Gu Yong had just returned home. He asked why she got high grades but never showed off to her father. Gu Yong started sobbing and blaming herself. If I had listened to my parents that day and not ridden my bike to school and had an accident, maybe Dongman wouldn't have died. It's all my fault that he had that accident. As if waking up, for all this time he had almost forgotten that he still had two children who also needed to be cared for. He couldn't keep wallowing in grief and forget that his current family also needed him to take care of them. Zisun was the same. When she asked Unman, it took a while for the boy to burst into tears and say, "I didn't dare say anything because I left him and ran away." So he had that accident. Zisun also suddenly realized that she still had two children to take care of. So she hugged Unman and apologized. After lying listless for 3 days, the man of the family also got up and ate a big bowl of rice. Guan-seek still didn't forget to pick out the best parts for his wife and children, and only ate the vegetables. After eating, he also didn't forget to remind Gu Yong to tell her teacher, "In 3 days, Dad will be back to pay your school fees." Today when he went to work, Guan-seek wasn't going to sell fish, but to buy something delicious. He told Unman, "I'll bring it home for us to enjoy. Let's all eat together as a family." The next day, Zisun was still dazed like a person without a soul. While cleaning up the goods, she kept complaining that this job was so dirty. Zisun no longer liked the sea or seafood, because it had taken away her beloved son. Guan-seek saw that and could only run after her and comfort her. That damn sea. Zisun really didn't want anything to do with it because it was so dirty. She just wanted this summer to pass quickly. Sometimes it's too bright, sometimes it's unusually gloomy. Sometimes it gives abundant life. Sometimes it pours down and cleans everything away. Who can live like that? Guan-seek said that even if the summer makes the plants fall over, they still get up. Even if it really sweeps everything away, when the sun shines, everything comes back to life. At this time, Zisun blamed herself. She said that she had taught her two children that every time they wanted their father to come home quickly, they should go to the breakwater to find him. And every time she took them along, she would say that. That's what made Dongman run out to find his father by himself. If she hadn't said those things, would Dongman still be alive with him now? Guan-seek could only go up and comfort Zisun. But inside, he always hated one thing. He shouldn't have gone to build the seawall on that stormy day, no matter what. He only blamed himself. Zisun now told her daughter, "Where can you find such a caring husband? But luckily, Mom still has you two with your sparkling eyes in front of me." Yu Yang asked if they had saved their parents. Zisun didn't deny it, because without them, Guan-seek and Zisun couldn't have endured. When Dongman died, your father's heart was already broken when he signed the death certificate. At that time, Mom even thought to herself how her family had overcome such difficulties. Until she went into the kitchen. Everywhere was food that the villagers had sent. That's right, Mom and Dad overcame adversity, thanks to the love and solidarity between people. If she had been alone, she would have collapsed 100 times. Back then, the landlord saw that Zisun's kitchen was starting to smoke again. It showed that her house was also continuing to live and accepting the truth. The landlord intended to bring eggs over, but his wife stopped him. He said, "Why not bring freshly laid eggs? Fresh eggs are the best, right?" Hearing that, his wife let go and let him bring the eggs to Zisun. He said she was acting like it was a big deal. Who was the old lady who took all the rice in the house and gave it away? She didn't back down and retorted, "Who took the octopus in the house and gave it away?" It turned out that back then, the two of them were always the ones who provided rice for Zisun's house and brought seafood to her because they considered Zisun like their own daughter. Previously, Zisun had someone pay her rent for 3 months, and that person was none other than her stepmother. She had only asked the landlord to write the name Jian Hai on the scholarship form. Who knew he misheard 10,000 won as 100,000 won? Although she saw the mistake, Minho still decided to consider it as using that money to give to Zisun instead of her stepfather, because he had missed out on helping Zisun go to university. Later, her daughter also got into the university she wanted. Zisun's family finally had the opportunity to leave the place that was so painful for her and move towards the future with her children. Seeing his daughter get into university, Guan-seek immediately wanted to sell the boat, sell the current house and go to Seoul. Zisun never thought she would one day be able to return to the mainland to live, and she felt happier than ever. At the ceremony for receiving the Seoul National University admission letter for Zisun, she had no more worries, but for Guan-seek, he did. While Zisun was calling Guyong's name, a family nearby introduced themselves and said her name was very similar to their husband's. Guan-seek's worries had arrived. It was the boy from the family opposite that made him a little worried, and a father's intuition is never wrong. After the photo shoot, Guan-seek was annoyed and said to Zisun, "I knew it. Our daughter hasn't grown up for long, and some strange boy is already sticking his foot in." It was clearly a family photo shoot that day. Why did it turn into a solo photo shoot like this? That boy Yongbom is aiming for our Guyong. Guan-seek said to call Guyong to Seoul. Zisun said, "Are you afraid your daughter will run to Busan like you did? You dragged someone else's daughter away, but you won't let your daughter go?" If his eldest daughter got married, Guan-seek would probably die of anger. As expected, Guyong and Yongbom were secretly dating behind their parents' backs, and Guyong was no different from a copy of her mother. Today was the last day the two of them were together, because the next day, Yongbom had to go back to his hometown. Guyong asked if he didn't have anything he wanted to do with her. This boy Yongbom was no different from Guan-seek before, just a little more naive because Guyong wanted to spend a night with him, but he couldn't understand her intentions. Back to the village that year, the whole village was celebrating, because the eldest daughter of Guan-seek and Zisun had passed the national university. But instead, the congratulatory banner had been replaced by the hateful village chief Sang-gil with Citizens Olympics. The main purpose was to create a progressive neighborhood in this village. The contractors from the city, through Sang-gil, just came to the village and smashed the villagers' belongings, making everyone furious in the heated situation between the two sides. Zisun slowly appeared and lay down right in front of the protest vehicles. She challenged the village chief Sang-gil. "If you're so tough, run me over. Without 30 million, I won't open my eyes." The city people seeing this scene could only stand and look on wearily, and then gave up. From this incident, everywhere in the village it was rumored that Zisun would become the next village chief to replace that hateful Sang-gil. Zisun said she really didn't care about politics at all. Mrs. Yang In asked, "So you're not going to follow your husband's wishes?" Since she was little, when Zisun was asked what she would do when she grew up, she said she would become president, or at least village chief. When it was Guan-seek's turn, when he was asked, he immediately answered that he would become the first husband. Although she also wanted her husband to be the first husband, the villagers still partly leaned towards Sang-gil more, as he continued to treat everyone and give gifts like the first time he ran. But the problem was, there was little support. It was more like the ladies were coming to freeload. As for Zisun, one day she was called to the school for a parent-teacher conference. But this meeting was a bit strange, when her son Unman said that only his mother was going. The teacher then led both mother and son to the parking lot and said, "Look at your son's accomplishments. Each car is missing a letter. In my life as a teacher, I've never seen a child like your son. Does taking the first letters of car makes get you into university or something?" And Unman didn't just take the letters, he also sold them. It's true that having a child like that brings joy. In contrast to Unman, Guyong was so famous at university, that her classmates were also jealous and gossiped about her. They were even more jealous when they found out that Gu Yong had a handsome, rich boyfriend who picked her up every day. And that incident reached the ears of the village chief Sang-gil. In the next appointment ceremony, he slandered Gu Yong, saying that she was a girl who was obsessed with kept boys. But no one cared. What kind of village chief doesn't care about developing the village, but instead spies on a young girl who's just started university? If you keep doing that, Z-sun will rise up against you. It's just that Z-sun is a classy person, so she's holding back against a dog like you. The landlady even reminded him that his father was a traitor. When the Japanese invaded, his father changed his name to a Japanese name, right? Although he tried to defend himself, no one believed the village chief's words. The people here were just continuing to freeload. They weren't really supporting Sang-gil. At that party, Z-sun's diver friends were upset and asked Z-sun, "Why don't you tell the villagers about the bad things that Sang-gil has done? The villagers also have the right to know the truth. Sang-gil crossed the line first. You should do the same." But every time it's the same. Sang-gil always used gifts to bribe the villagers, making people temporarily continue to support him. But he wasn't the village chief for long. One day, Sang-gil was busy having an affair with a call girl in the warehouse. The diving team and Z-sun caught Sang-gil cheating on his wife. Mrs. Gangjia didn't forget to tease. "Someone like you just wants to be village chief to go rub the feet of call girls?" And as a result, Sang-gil lost his position as village chief. Z-sun also became the first woman to be the village chief. Guan-seek's dream also came true. He became the first husband in this coastal countryside. Everyone in the village was happy, returning to the party celebrating the village chief. At this time, her son Unman saw his mother dancing like a wriggler, looking really embarrassing. He told Guan-seek to go stop her. But how could it be that easy, with someone who dotes on his wife and children so much? Guan-seek said, "She's worked hard all her life. So what's wrong with dancing a little now?" He even saw Z-sun pole dancing, but he didn't stop her. On the contrary, he found it adorable. On the way back, the couple kept showing affection, making their son following behind feel awkward. Z-sun is now happy that she is no longer someone with the word deputy after her name. She wished her mother was still here so she could tell her, but if she could go back. Z-sun still wanted to go back to hold her mother's hand one more time. The next day, Z-sun, according to her mother's wishes, treated the diving ladies to a big batch of rice cakes. She told everyone to go around and brag that she is successful now. The three of them also didn't expect that the little girl from back then could now be so strong and stand up against an unfortunate life. Mrs. Yang In said that if Guang Rai were still alive, she would have carried a drum around Hallison Mountain. As for Gu Yong at university, the handsome guy who always picked her up was actually the driver of a chaebol family. Gyung just happened to ride along and tutor the daughter of that chaebol. The only problem was that chaebol's daughter was bad at English, but good at cursing in English. Not to mention the two were so close that they were like sisters. And Gu Yong freely ate at Jenny's house. After the tutoring session, Jenny told Gu Yong to just take money from the ceramic jar. Her mother knew how much she took. While Jenny was on the phone, the housekeeper told her to just take double and then leave and never come back. Before she could understand what the housekeeper meant, Jenny's mother suddenly came back and asked Gu Yong for a favor. Mrs. Kim said that she was very rich now and didn't lack anything. The only thing was that her mother and daughter didn't have any degrees. Then she handed a piece of paper with a fake name and profile to Gu Yong and said, "Take the exam for Jenny." So it turned out that there was a reason why the previous tutors had quit one after another, and also why the housekeeper told her to leave and never come back. At Gu Yong's dormitory, Guan-seek came to see his daughter, but he couldn't find her name on the name list. He thought that his daughter might be renting a place outside. He didn't know how much it cost. Suddenly, a familiar boy next to him said that it was very expensive. Later, Guan-seek went into the security guard's room to sit. The boy Young Bom saw him glaring at him and was a little wary because he thought he wanted to fight him. Guan-seek asked the security guard if there was any way to report to the police. Why is a soldier hanging around the dormitory? Young Bom suddenly remembered that the uncle in front of him was the father from that year. He boldly stepped forward. "Hello, future father-in-law." He introduced himself. The two of them had met at the opening ceremony. "Those who are trying to steal my daughter." He didn't like this guy who was digging at the corner at all. "Why am I your father?" "Why?" Back to Gu Yong, she refused to take the exam for Jenny because it was illegal. Just being a tutor for her was already a serious offense. She wanted to refuse, but Mrs. Kim didn't want to hear the answer now and wanted Gu Yong to think about it. How could it be that easy? When Gu Yong was about to leave, she was immediately arrested by the security guard for suspicion of stealing Mrs. Kim's belongings. Yu Yong decided to go back to Mrs. Kim's house to talk. Mrs. Kim kept taking out papers about apartment projects for Yu Yong to choose from. If she took the exam for Jenny, the largest apartment would be 120 square meters. She could choose a dragon that comes from a stream. If you want to make your parents more comfortable, think carefully. Yu Yong didn't want to. She didn't want to betray her parents and only wanted to make money from what she was good at. Yu Yong said that even if she helped Jenny pass the exam, her life was destined for failure. On the way out, Yu Yong also took a few extra coins as compensation for enduring Jenny's absurdity. But life is never easy when someone without status goes up against rich people. She was immediately arrested by the security guard again, who demanded the money back. She was also accused of stealing a diamond ring, which made Yu Yong angry, and she went upstairs and yelled. As a result, she was taken to the police station. Luckily, Yu Yong was just like her mother that year, when the police arrested her without any evidence. Every sentence she retorted was just like the sun was present in her. But after a while of checking, the police, although they didn't find any diamonds as claimed, continued to make things difficult. They brought in another female police officer to search Yu Yong's body. At the bus stop, Guan-seek continued to wait for his daughter, and Yong Bom came up to chat. But every time he said something, Guan-seek ignored him. Guan-seek forbade this soldier in front of him from dating Yu Yong, but he didn't expect that the two of them had already dated, and this guy had already been dumped. Hearing that he was dumped, Guan-seek was happy and said, "What kind of student are you? Always chasing after women. It's right that you got dumped." He thought this guy had been dumped by many people, who knew Yung had dumped him 8 times, which made the father a little embarrassed. He told Yong Bom that he wasn't good enough for his daughter, so he should just live his life. But when Yong Bom revealed the reason why he was dumped, she kept saying, "Why are you as silent as a clam?" This sentence made Guan-seek remember his childhood, when he was pursuing Zasun. Their situations were exactly the same, like a copy of a copy. He was about to give him a bottle of water to comfort him. Yong Bom took the bottle of water that his father-in-law gave him. But he thought again, "You're still too young." When the housekeeper heard that the homeowner had taken Yu Yong to the police station, just as an excuse because she wouldn't take the exam for her, she decided to take the homeowner's ring and create a little drama. While Mrs. Kim and her daughter were having dinner, the housekeeper said, "I found the ring under here. I found it. Should we report it to the police?" Seeing that her boss didn't say anything, the housekeeper decided to use that real diamond ring to threaten Mrs. Kim that if she didn't withdraw the complaint, she would throw this diamond ring away. Yu Yong felt hurt, so she called home to her mother. But when she heard her mother's worried voice, she couldn't say a word. Her mother immediately reminded her that today her father had gone to the city for a trip. She heard there was a new museum opening, but in fact, her father had been waiting for her all day at the dormitory. As expected, Guan-seek met his daughter at the bus stop, which surprised her when she asked when he arrived, but not to worry his daughter. He just changed the subject and took her to eat. Seeing her father remain silent, she became sad and started drinking. "Did you come here to eat spicy noodles just to be silent? If that's the case, why eat together? Just talk to yourself." Guan-seek heard that and reminded Yu Yong not to get involved in dating soldiers. "Here, all these kids are top of their class. Dragons from streams all gather in one pond. It must not be easy for you to study. That's why you had to leave the dormitory, right?" Hearing the phrase "dragon from a stream" made Yu Yong hate this phrase even more. It was because of that phrase from the person who made her go to the police station to be searched. Yu Yong also said she wanted to study abroad. "I don't want to do this terrible tutoring job. I want to do all sorts of things. It's all because I'm greedy and selfish. I keep wanting to run further and then I get pulled back." Speaking out all her daughter's wishes, Guan-seek encouraged her. "You go ahead and do it because Dad is still here." Just like that year when Dongman died, although exhausted physically and mentally, Guan-seek could still persevere just so his daughter could live without lacking anything. Until the last bus, Guan-seek didn't forget to keep reminding Yu Yong of the things she needed to do, especially not dating that soldier. But Yu Yong temporarily didn't care about those things. What made her heartbroken was her father, who had waited for her all day at the dormitory, just to see his daughter who was away from home just once. Remembering what her mother reminded her last night, "If you see your father, be gentle with him. He really wants to go up there just to see his precious daughter." When Guan-seek returned, she waved goodbye to her father. Seeing this scene made Guan-seek think of his daughter as still being small, still needing his care and protection. He thought to himself, "If it's like this, how can I leave?" It's true that his daughter and wife are always the most important to Guan-seek. At Mrs. Kim's house, she asked why the housekeeper had helped that little girl. She just said that she was familiar. But in fact, it was in the year she had just moved to Seoul. A young couple came to her room and warned her. If it weren't for that young couple, the housekeeper would have lost the heirloom from her mother that she had brought with her. And the reason she helped Gu-yong was because she was just like the girl from that year, who was Zi-sun. The housekeeper advised Mrs. Kim, "Your daughter notices everything from you. You should accumulate some good karma. Good deeds from parents will be passed down to their children. Don't let your child's life be ruined any further." After this, Mrs. Kim also decided to turn herself in for the things she had done, and Gu-yong was therefore exonerated. As for her and her boyfriend Yong-bom, they were no different from her parents that year. While he was enlisted, seeing his girlfriend crying made Yong-bom also say, "If you're like this, how can I go to the army?" Gu-yong said, "Then don't go," and the two of them hugged. Yong-bom sniffled and said, "If you keep doing this, I'll become a deserter, or maybe you should marry me then." Gu-yong said that you never know what life holds, you only know if you're getting married. When you walked down the aisle, they were so engrossed in each other that Yong-bom forgot the boat had sailed. As a result, she cried in front of the wedding venue and walked straight to where the marriage began with Guan-seek. Will she be able to marry Yong-bom? Back in the past, when Gu-yong went to see her professor, she said that because Gu-yong wasn't eligible for a government-funded scholarship, she wouldn't be able to study abroad as she wanted. However, Gu-yong's advisor made an offer, which was that she could help Gu-yong study abroad. That was also Gu-yong's dream, and also a part of her pride. But Gu-yong didn't want to be indebted to her teacher, so she temporarily refused. When Gu-yong called back home to her mother, Gu-yong immediately bragged about being offered help by her teacher to study abroad, but she had refused. And by the way, could her mother send her some tangerines to give as a gift to her teacher? Hearing about studying abroad, Zae-sun was curious how much money her daughter would need to go to Japan. Gu-yong didn't want her mother to spend money on her, so she said she didn't need to study abroad. With a child who had such a dream, Zae-sun remembered how her mother always tried to help her escape her unfortunate fate. Now she also wanted her daughter to fulfill that dream, so she also tried to ask how much money it would take to go to Japan. But the two of them ended up arguing because of it. Gu-yong didn't want to be a burden to her mother. Because of this, Zae-sun told her husband about it and complained, "If I can't help my daughter achieve her dream, I could not stand it." Zae-sun also knew that Guan-seek knew about this beforehand. Just the fact that he had been drinking since he got home made her suspicious. With Zae-sun and his daughter, Guan-seek seemingly couldn't say anything. As a result, the two of them decided to sell everything in their hometown, from her mother's house with childhood memories, to leaving the burial place of her deceased child in the sad land, as well as Zae-sun's difficult childhood, struggling to survive day by day. The whole family of three also moved to the city to live, although she had partially stepped onto her dream. Gu-yong couldn't help but be moved when she was away from home, for the first time like this. Luckily, a boy gave her a cookie, which made Gu-yong feel a little more comforted. As for Zae-sun and Guan-seek, seeing the shabby new apartment couldn't help but feel troubled. It was like they were helping their daughter achieve her dream. Her dream from back then was also gradually being transferred to her daughter, just like Zae-sun's mother had done with her when she was little. After Zae-sun's family sold all their land in the countryside and moved to the city, this is also when a sad story started with Zae-sun's copy, which is her oldest daughter, Gu-yong, carrying her dream of studying abroad. Life far from home is never easy. Because she was once kicked out of the dorm for losing her scholarship, Gu-yong also had to move out. The only problem was, this room wasn't very good, since the floor heating was broken, and the landlords always argued. Of course, bad luck always hits people in the lower or middle class of society. One day when Gu-yong was studying at home, the landlord came back and found that the key he usually hid under a flower pot was gone. Knowing his daughter was home, he immediately called for her to open the door. Gu-yong was going to ignore the landlord, but suddenly the doorstop started shaking. It turned out the landlord's daughter had brought her boyfriend over for some hanky-panky behind her parents' backs. Yu-song had no choice but to ask Gu-yong to help her hide her boyfriend. After the meal, the landlord brought Gu-yong a steamed bun as a gift, and noticed that his daughter was acting a little strange today. Never before had Yu-song paid attention to housework, or the fact that she was home early today. He suspected that something was wrong in the house, so he started checking around. Gu-yong saw this and said that she had to go to school now, so she hoped he could check later. He was about to check the closet when Gu-yong stopped him. Inside was her underwear. "I'm sure you don't want to be called a pervert, right?" Although that temporarily fooled the landlord, who knew, seeing his daughter not leaving, made him confident in his guess. The result was that Yu-song's boyfriend was caught red-handed. Not only was Gu-yong a poor student, but she also ended up breaking the closet. She thought her bad luck with this hookup guy was over. Who knew, during one time looking for job postings, Gu Young would run into the boyfriend who was caught the other day. Ignoring the past of the guy in front of her, Gu Young only cared about work, so she asked if she could work with him. And just like that, she successfully got a job at a movie theater. Here, Gu Young worked. Outside of work hours, she also took the time to study to fulfill the dream that her family had worked so hard to save up for her. One day, while Gu Young was selling tickets, a customer came and gave her a hard time. This customer kept paying with small change, which made Gu Young uncomfortable. It wasn't until the mysterious customer placed a ring, along with the coins on the counter, that she recognized the person in front of her was her boyfriend, Jong Bom. Gu Young immediately asked her boss to watch the ticket counter, and made the excuse of going to boil water. But actually, she met up with her boyfriend in the screening room. She had been alone here for quite a while, so when she saw Jong Bom, Gu Young was like a puppy seeing its owner, wagging its tail in welcome. Just like that, the two of them went to the screening room and shared a happy kiss. Reunited with the person they loved most, Jong Bom revealed that he came to visit her without his family knowing. He had lied about going to the military for a week and then returning, but he had requested leave early just so he could come here to see Gu Young. After work, Jong Bom saw Gu Young home and found that the way to her house seemed unsafe, since everywhere there were unclean things. Some ill-mannered person had even drawn the word sex on the wall, making Jong Bom even more worried. He suggested that Gu Young come back to Seoul to live with him. Seeing his girlfriend living in such an unsafe neighborhood, who could be comfortable with that? Gu Young thought it was pretty good living here, since the food around was delicious and quite cheap. Seeing her boyfriend being so discriminatory like that made Gu Young a little uncomfortable, and she didn't want to see him anymore. She chased her boyfriend away and warned him that if he followed her, she would cut him off and never see him again. Not long after arguing with her boyfriend, at work, Gu Young was forced to deliver food to her coworkers, but she also got to eavesdrop on some drama. The landlord's daughter was arguing with her boyfriend because she suspected he was seeing someone else. Suddenly, a phone rang near where Gu Young was hiding, and she was caught red-handed. The landlord's daughter thought Gu Young was the mistress stealing her boyfriend, so every time, she took her anger out on Gu Young's shoes. It's true that poverty is always followed by bad luck, and it didn't stop there. Later, when Gu Young decided to live with her boyfriend, she was also discovered by Jong Bom's mother. From childhood to adulthood, Gu Young hadn't had to lift a finger to do housework. So now, Gu Young's clumsiness was immediately judged by her boyfriend's mother. That day's meal happened to be Jong Bom's birthday. During the meal, Gu Young tried to win over her boyfriend's mother, but it didn't go very well. She constantly countered the standards that Gu Young was trying to meet. She also immediately put Gu Young down, saying this was her house, not Jong Bom's. I hope next time you won't show up at this house again. It's better if you don't come at all. Although Jong Bom tried to tell his mother off, it didn't matter. She was even more outrageous when she called Gu Young this thing, as if to say she was an object that could be thrown away at any time. Gu Young was so hurt that she left the apartment. Regardless of how much Jong Bom worried about her getting wet in the rain, to Gu Young, how much richer than others could a mother be to look down on her like that? Gu Young angrily recounted everything, how she was criticized for not knowing how to ladle seaweed soup, for being an unworthy child. And then, this thing? I hate having to grovel and beg from anyone. Seeing his girlfriend so upset, Jong Bom not only didn't defend her, but also scolded her for eating so much. Gu Young said she just wanted to make a good impression on the mother of the person she liked. Who wouldn't want to marry the person they love? Gu Young now wanted Jong Bom to choose. Either he would become a son who obeyed his mother, or he would become a good husband. Jong Bom immediately scolded Gu Young, saying there was no such man in this world. Gu Young argued back, mentioning her father, Guan-seek. Her father had done that, so Gu Young said she wouldn't live with a man who only listened to his mother. Bad luck continued. One night while Gu Young was sleeping, her room leaked katbu gas. Luckily, the son came to visit Gu Young that day and found her daughter was not okay. Fortunately, her coworker from the movie theater was there. He quickly got Gu Young to the ambulance, and thanks in part to luck, she survived. After hearing that his girlfriend had a gas poisoning accident, Jong Bom immediately went to the hospital to check on Gu Young's health. Seeing her struggling to put on her socks, Jong Bom felt heartbroken and both massaged her feet and put her socks on for her. Coincidentally, the son saw this scene. This scene reminded her of when Guan-seek had done the same for her years ago. Jong Bom had thought carefully about the question of whether he would choose his mother or Gu Young. He chose her. He cried and proposed, making the other patients itchy. Annoyed to the point, the nurse asked Zisun to kick the boy out. Who knew? Zisun was happy, because she didn't expect someone to propose to her daughter, just like her husband had. How did she find a guy just like my husband? Jongbam also suggested that Guyong come back to live with him. If she continued to live in that awful place, what if she was in danger again? If you're cold, my place has a heater I bought. The road in that neighborhood is dangerous, and it's not safe either. Guyong could only comfort him kindly. The nurse, seeing this lovey-dovey scene between this cuckoo couple, was speechless. Suddenly, Zisun heard Jongbam tell her daughter that she just needed to please his mother a little. Zisun immediately went over and cut Jongbam off, saying, "Your mother hasn't accepted my daughter, has she? What do you want now?" Jongbam could only stand there dumbfounded, unable to say anything. Sometime later, after recovering, Guyong returned to work and found that her co-worker who used to draw movie posters for the theater had quit. The owner said he had reached the age to enlist in the military, so he had to quit. It was truly a pity for such a talented artist who earned a living for the theater. Thinking about having to throw away all the hand-drawn advertisements also made Guyong feel a bit sad because he drew quite beautifully. Suddenly, a painting in the corner of the room, blown by the wind, caught Guyong's attention. It turned out to be a portrait of her before her co-worker left for military service. It seemed that he had secretly liked Guyong after breaking up with the landlord's daughter. Sometime later, Guyong also decided to introduce Jongbam to both families. At this time, Guyong's family arrived first and had to wait for the other party for a whole hour. After Jongbam's family arrived, for the first time, Zisun saw her rebellious daughter use honorifics with others. While at home, she was a little princess. To please the groom's family, Guyong proactively ladled the soup so she wouldn't be called a flower in a glass cage. All the delicious things in the seafood soup she ladled out for everyone. By the time it was her turn, there was only a little bit of residue left. Seeing her daughter like this, Zisun couldn't help but remember the old days when she was the same. She could only ladle the leftover rice and soup, enduring the hardship herself. But her daughter was different. Zisun switched her daughter's soup bowl with hers. Her mother's life had been hard, but her daughter would never have to suffer for others. While Guan-seek was discussing the wedding arrangements between the two families, Jongbam's mother interrupted and asked if Guyong hadn't told everyone yet. Jongbam tried to stop his mother, but she expressed her own opinion. A noble family like hers knew that Jeju Island had its own customs. In the future, Guyong would be her daughter-in-law, so she wanted Guan-seek's family to follow the groom's family's wishes. She only wanted to hold the wedding in Seoul, instead of holding weddings in both places as usual. You could see how much Jongbam's mother despised the poor, because he did not want his daughter to worry. Guan-seek could only awkwardly agree because Jongbam was the one his daughter chose. But he also asked to let his daughter work, because it would be too much if she did housework. Jongbam's mother told Guyong to quit her job. As a wife in this family, she only had the duty to care for and encourage her husband. Jongbam tried to intervene, but Guyong was ordered around by his father. He made her get him a bowl of scorched rice soup. It seems the family only ate and made others run their errands. Guan-seek signaled to his boyfriend to help Guyong, but it looked like he didn't dare. Remembering that year, Guan-seek was the first person in the feudal generation to stand up against old-fashioned customs, never letting his wife and children fight alone. And now, seeing his child like this, Zisun couldn't take it anymore either. She stepped forward to stop Guyong and said she'd do it. Jongbam's mother didn't forget to take a dig at her, saying it is no wonder that Guyong doesn't know how to do anything. It turns out, her mother does everything for her. Zisun then apologized for not teaching her daughter these things, because to Zisun, she was too precious. She wouldn't have to endure any of the old-fashioned things that Zisun had to go through. It's not the feudal era anymore. After the meal, although she acted like she was fine, Guyong knew that her mother was heartbroken in the car. Jongbam is truly a good child. Guyong didn't even know what to say to the person she loves. When she was going home with Jongbam's family, his mother still made sure to subtly insult Guyong, calling her a hothouse flower. She responded, and Guyong said that she really was like a hothouse flower. She grew up in an extremely safe hothouse, so she just hoped she wouldn't be too harsh. Her parents would cry. As for Guan-seek and Zisun, she was so angry that she just wanted to curse everything out to protect her daughter. Guan-seek wanted to do the same, but he was afraid he would hurt his daughter. Their child was way better than that guy who just clung to his mother's apron strings. Zisun was determined not to let her daughter keep hearing about not having a damn silver spoon. But because her daughter still wanted to marry Jongbam, Zisun also helplessly went to visit the in-laws' house with her daughter for the next meeting. Seeing her daughter rushing down the street in high heels, she asked if she was going to meet her master or something. Her mother's feet hurt, but she didn't want to take a taxi. Was her mother's foot pain less important than being on time to meet that woman? At home, she yells like a boss, but outside, she gets pushed around. Yu-young didn't even know how to argue, because her mother was so right. Arriving at the tailor shop, the staff kept recommending some beautiful pink fabrics. If she looked at these things, her mood would improve a little, but she wanted to try the one with pink flowers. It would be nice. But once again, Jongbom's mother ruined the atmosphere between the two families. With her superior personality, she suggested that Z-sun should wear this green fabric, because at the wedding, she didn't want to lose face just because of the patterns and the rustic dress Z-sun wanted to wear, even though her in-law always made things difficult. Z-sun still lowered herself, just because she hoped that her daughter's future marriage would be peaceful. She also sent her in-law a small gift, but in her eyes, this amount of money from Z-sun was not worth much. Meanwhile, Jongbom also heard the news and came here. He quickly told Yu-young to take him to meet those two immediately, because if they waited any longer, something bad would happen. Of course, it was already too late. His mother on this side had already said straight out that she didn't like Yu-young. No matter what, she would prevent this wedding from happening. Z-sun angrily took her daughter straight home. Seeing her mother so angry, Yu-young asked why she didn't say everything at dinner the other day. Z-sun then let everything out. She really couldn't stand that family's son. He couldn't even pass the civil service exam. He's not good for anything, but he acts like he's all that. Yu-young immediately defended her lover, asking how she was better than him. You think I'm inferior too, so you couldn't even say that you like pink. But Z-sun said she didn't think so. She yelled, then why do you have to grovel in front of that family like that? Z-sun helplessly just said she was afraid she would make things difficult for her. She held back because she was afraid they would hate her, not because she was inferior. Z-sun didn't want her daughter to be hurt because if she was hurt one bit, her parents would be hurt 10 times over. At home, Yu-young was the one who argued with her mother. It wasn't until she saw Jongbom's mother's true colors that she woke up. The fact that she went to her boyfriend's house was also blamed entirely on her. She was insulted as a shameless, despicable woman. Even though I already told your mother, but she still wants to be in-laws to be satisfied? Just a few words, and she's already crying. Are you the kind of person who just likes to break up other people's mother-son relationships? Jongbom stood to the side, cowardly, not daring to stand up for his girlfriend, letting Yu-young be insulted by his mother time and time again. It wasn't until Jongbom's mother claimed to be a person with dignified words that Yu-young couldn't take it anymore. You've never said a single dignified word. How you treat my mother, I'm sure you understand. The reason Yu-young put up with it until now wasn't because she was incompetent. She just put up with it because she knew how embarrassed her boyfriend felt about his mother. Jongbom's mother still wouldn't back down and continued to mock. Your father is the kind of person you can tell at a glance is a laborer with nothing. You think you can just send out wedding invitations and be done with it? Yu-young decided not to get married anymore. She turned to Jongbom and said she wouldn't get married like this. If she did, her parents would cry. Seeing that her son was being dumped, she continuously insulted Yu-young, making Jongbom unable to take it anymore, and yelled at her to stop. She said she was only doing it for Jongbom. He was her pride, her life. But Yu-young said that the life she was living was Jongbom's, not hers. These words were exactly the same as what Z-sun said to Jongbom's mother when she mocked her daughter. Z-sun said she was a big rock, blocking her son's path. From the time she was dumped until later, she thought she would be happy to choose a suitable partner for her son. Day after day, her life was still boring, until one day, seeing Jongbom come home, she immediately got excited. Do I have to tiptoe around that girl? Why do I have to live such an unhappy life? All the effort I put into raising you, and I have to endure this? Jongbom then asked, are you the only one living your life? What about me? Do you see in that wedding picture, only you are smiling? I'm a fool who's never had what I really wanted in my life. So Yu-young's first love ended. That year, she cried a lot when she had to break up with him, because she didn't want to be miserable, and her parents to be insulted. Even though he came to see her many times, it took them over a year to completely break up with each other. On Jongbom's birthday, he came to give Yu-young flowers, but this was the last time. She said she loved him very much, but she also loved herself. Even if she didn't want to, Yu-young would become a young woman in her 20s that he would remember later. The opportunity would not come to Jongbom again, even though it was a little sad to break up with the person she loved for 7 years. Luckily, Yu-young had a best friend of 20 years to comfort her whenever she was sad. Seeing her friend so lifeless, not even caring about the refrigerator. Her best friend also wondered how Gu-young had survived all this time. At times like these, Gu-young felt that her parents' calls and check-ins were warmer than ever. Maybe she was always as small as when she was a child. Ji-sun would be much less worried if only she were a carefree child, always feeling happy, always near her mother, instead of like now. So Gu-young also decided to treat herself to a vacation and visit her family. Seeing her daughter return home, Ji-sun and Guan-seek, who were sad, suddenly had faces that bloomed like flowers. Her mother showed off the pile of stewed beef she made, and there was also the extremely sour fermented kimchi that she liked. Guan-seek got the heater, afraid his daughter would be cold. He also took out a mat for her to sit on. Only when she got home did everything become warmer and more comfortable than ever. How long had it been since she felt this peaceful? Every peaceful day is a bit too much for Gu-young, when every day, every meal, she has a table full of hearty food. Even though her parents eat frugally at home, when their daughter comes home, Guan-seek and Ji-sun don't hesitate to spend all their money to buy food for Gu-young, just afraid that their daughter will lose a single kilogram. One day, Guan-seek called Gu-young to wake her up to invite her to a place, but Gu-young felt irritated with Guan-seek, thinking back to how she could wake up at 4 a.m. to go out with her boyfriend, but now she's irritated with her father. She also decided not to make her father sad and went out with him. Mr. Guan-seek saw his daughter agree to go with him. His face clearly showed the happiness of a father who excitedly carried the pile of food he had prepared in advance. It was still the family's boat from that year. The reason Guan-seek brought Gu-young along today was because there would be no clouds. It was perfect for watching the sunrise. Gu-young wondered if her father woke up at this time every day to watch the sunrise. Why didn't he sleep more? How could he live like this every day? Guan-seek said that if he slept a little less, his 2 children could rest assured and sleep a little more. So he was alert and woke up early to go fishing. Seeing her father alone, Gu-young asked if he wasn't scared or sad. Guan-seek said he was scared. When it rained or there were storms, he just looked at one thing, those lights in the distance. It made him feel less lonely because he thought there would be someone else afraid with him. So he was less scared. Gu-young asked if he regretted having a daughter who called off her wedding, and the wedding invitations had already been sent out. Everyone knew she had a bad reputation. Guan-seek didn't regret these things. He only regretted that he couldn't stand up to protect his daughter at that time, and always blamed himself for not being a great, richer father. He just wished Gu-young had come from a different, wealthy family. She wouldn't have had to endure these things. But when she heard these words, Gu-young realized how insensitive she had been all this time. What was her father working so hard for? He had 100, but always had to give his child 120. Dad, don't mention some rich father anymore. Even if I could trade the president to be my father, I wouldn't want to. She cried and scolded him for being so annoying. Guan-seek also felt happy that Gu-young didn't get married. It was okay with him. Who knew his child would say, "You and mom got married so happily. Why can't I get married?" If dad was Gu-young's son, he was like the light that pulled the whole family out of the darkest places in society. Compared to that sunrise, he was even higher. She hadn't been touched for long when, upon returning home, Ji-sun constantly tried to set her up, saying this guy and that guy were good and kind like her father. But Gu-young refused. She said she had only been broken up for a year. Not to mention, everyone knew she was the one who was dumped. So who would dare to marry her? Her parents would no longer have the face to look at their daughters. What Gu-young didn't expect was that Ji-sun had never sent out wedding invitations in the early years of her marriage. She said she swore she would make Gu-young have everything. I want her to fly, not just hide in the kitchen corner. I want her to overturn the table and live. So on Gu-young's path to adulthood, Ji-sun was always there, like a silent sacrifice, guiding Gu-young, and she did it because she wanted her daughter to always remember her, to come to her funeral and tell the story of how great her mother was, just like her mother had raised Ji-sun that year. From that day on, Gu-young decided to take good care of herself. She was her parents' hope. When she left, it was also when the couple's house became empty. But she also didn't forget to buy gifts for her parents as a way to repay them. Going back to the time before Gu-young went to college, Mrs. Ji-sun and the other women in the village bought the old shop where she went on a blind date with the old village head to make a seafood restaurant. She was tired from cleaning, but the annoying son came to make fun of her, making Ji-sun a little angry. To make amends with his mother, Unman cut his ball in half to make a leg rest for his mother to sit more comfortably. He might look a bit playful on the outside, but Unman was quite similar to his father. One day, Unman brought a friend home, making Ji-sun curious to open the door, but she was also blocked. He wouldn't let his mother know who he was hiding in the room, but nothing can be hidden forever. One day, while eating apples with his mysterious friend in the room, Guan-seek also came home and wanted to drag that friend out. A man running away from home and not coming back to play here is not acceptable. But the person who was supposed to be a young man hiding inside the closet was a little off. Guan-seek thought that today, this friend seemed smaller than usual. It turned out that it was a girl that Unman was hiding. After being caught red-handed, seeing the hairstyle and the writing on the backpack was a bit strange, Ji-sun asked and found out that the writing on the backpack was Unman's name. Ji-sun thought the two were very close, who knew they had been dating for over 500 days. Guan-seek was angry and wanted to take a feather duster and hit him 500 times for dating early. Unman said, "You and mom loved each other since you were 10 years old. We're way late. Love has no fault." It was indeed exactly like Guan-seek's style that year. When he confessed to Ji-sun, Unman said that at first, he didn't like her. But after looking at her for 10 years, he liked her. In her eyes, I'm the best, he's just like his father. Ji-sun calmed down and asked the name of his girlfriend. She replied that it was Hyun-suk. Hyun-suk also introduced her full name, which was Bu Hyun-suk. Realizing something was wrong, it turned out that she was the daughter of that hateful village head from back then. Talk about a small world. Who told Hyun-suk's mother to tell her to grow up and love someone like Ji-sun's husband, who knew that the girl back then would take the son, who was just as love-struck as his father. She was truly a good, obedient daughter. So from childhood to adulthood, wherever Unman went, Hyun-suk was also there with him, like two peas in a pod. So Ji-sun also brought this matter to tell the aunts and her mother-in-law at the fish shop. Her mother-in-law couldn't help but gloat, because she had been waiting for this day for 10 years. Open your eyes wide and see your son being stolen. Ji-sun, just like you stole my son from me that year. Meanwhile, at the house of the village head Sang-gil, he was currently bitter, because he wasn't elected as village head like he used to be. Even sadder for him, his eldest son hated him more than anything. The son only sided with his mother, because in this house, only his mother cared about the children in the family. The eldest son also knew about his sister, dating the son of his father's previous blind date, who was Ji-sun. He warned Hyun-suk to stay away from that guy. And then he destroyed the pile of paper cranes that Hyun-suk was preparing for Unman. He said, "Do you look like those soldiers who just came back from the war? Already wanting to date and fall in love?" He also warned that if Hyun-suk met Unman again, he would beat him to a pulp. As a result, Unman was also beaten up a few times, until he was bruised and bloody. He went to Hyun-suk to break up with her. "From now on, wherever I go, I won't acknowledge you as my girlfriend, whatever you do. Stay away from me," Hyun-suk cried and warned Unman. "Unless I die, I won't let you date any other girl. If I see you with another girl, I'll beat her up to save his life." He had no choice but to leave. But he didn't expect her to throw a rock as a warning. Either die early or be protected by your lover. Unman had no choice but to come back and complain. "If I stay here, your brothers will follow me to the last stop of every bus route. I have to live my life too. How can I live here?" So Hyun-suk came up with a plan, which was for the two of them to run away together. Unman didn't know what to do. He also loved Hyun-suk, so he could only hug her and cry like two children. Two aunts at the fish shop who were passing by also overheard everything, honking their horns loudly. In the evening, Ji-sun, also worried about her daughter, conveniently asked how she was. Lately, the TV had been constantly reporting news about kidnapping and raping of minors, so she was worried. Ji-sun's aunt asked if she had been having nightmares lately, that she was so worried. Her uncle thought it was because of the ancestral rites that she was so worried. When she was a child, she also had strange things happen on the day of the ancestral rites. At the age of 10, while gathering firewood, Ji-sun discovered a black dragonfly. They were known as the death god of dragonflies. So in order to catch it, Ji-sun left the bundle of firewood for her younger sibling to chase after the dragonfly. Arriving at a bus stop, she met a middle-aged woman who looked like she was disabled, sitting and waiting for the bus. She called Ji-sun over and gave her a coin, asking Ji-sun to go to the grocery store nearby to exchange it for her for change. Without thinking much, Ji-sun quickly exchanged the coins for the woman. She was even generous enough to give Ji-sun a single coin, but it didn't stop there. This woman also gave her another bill, telling Ji-sun to go to a man in a car. It wasn't far from the grocery store where Ji-sun had just exchanged money. If Ji-sun exchanged it, she would get another coin. Without thinking much, Ji-sun immediately ran to that car to exchange money as instructed. The man in the car also opened the door waiting for Ji-sun. Luckily, Mrs. Guang Rai appeared in time and stopped her, asking what Z-sun was doing. The driver immediately left. She took Z-sun back to the place where the woman was earlier to find her, but she had also disappeared. Guang Rai immediately hugged Z-sun and sighed in relief. Even though Mrs. Guang Rai had never been to that area, with mother's instinct, Mrs. Guang Rai was able to find Z-sun. Going back to a time before Z-sun met the woman, when Mrs. Guang Rai took the pile of firewood to her mother's house, she found only her other daughter. She immediately asked where Z-sun was, and found out that she was chasing after the dragonfly. So she stayed on the hill. So Z-sun's mother ran with all her might, at full speed, to find Z-sun. Luckily, she wasn't caught by those human traffickers. Mrs. Guang Rai also didn't forget to ask for the woman's identifying characteristics to be vigilant. Z-sun said this person was dressed a little fancy, with scars all over her hands. So for several days after that, Mrs. Guang Rai, while selling fish, also pulled up the wrists of customers to see if she could find the target. While preparing to eat with her friend Yongjia, a woman who looked like Z-sun's description made her a little suspicious. While she was suspicious, suddenly the accomplice stepped up and asked her about children, seeing the two people in front of her talking about the kidnapping and having missed one recently. Coincidentally, the day Z-sun and she went to get firewood, so Mrs. Guang Rai quickly pulled out the hand of the kidnapper in front of her to see. As described, Mrs. Guang Rai immediately grabbed her hair, slapped her, and called all the villagers to witness. None of these human traffickers could escape from the villagers. Also, because of her careful, worried nature, Z-sun always called Gu Yang in the evening before going to bed to check on her. She didn't forget to remind her to only sleep at home, come home early, and remember to be careful with everything around her. Gu Yang at that time just listened, and then turned off the phone to go to sleep. But it was also that night that Z-sun had a dream about the old days, when her youngest son came back to give her a premonition. At that time, she didn't go looking for Gu Yang right away but stayed to comfort her youngest son. Mom will go find your sister for a bit and then come right back, okay? As a result, her dream also came true. Gu Yang, because she inhaled toxic gas from the coal heater, had fainted. Luckily, Z-sun, because she was worried, went up to visit her daughter. Because of that, she discovered that her child was in critical condition and called for an ambulance. Z-sun had lost a child once, so she was determined to fight psychologically, not to be afraid, to be able to save her beloved child from the hands of death. Not just once, but from childhood to adulthood. Many times Z-sun had always been there, in time to save Gu Yang. It was because of the worries of that mother that Z-sun was able to help her daughter to the hospital. Z-sun had felt uneasy countless times. Luckily, through those times, Gu Yang was still alive and well. Sometime later, when Unman was also old enough to go to the military, because he wasn't good enough to get into college, and his love life was being beaten up by his girlfriend's brother, Unman also decided to enlist. Z-sun and Guan-seek could only helplessly lament, but they couldn't do anything more for their son. For her, the worries of one child hadn't ended before they continued to the eldest child. Hearing that her daughter was about to get married, she went to meet her daughters-in-laws to give them a gift, as a little token of goodwill, hoping that her daughter would live comfortably there in the future. But instead of agreeing, the other party constantly criticized and mocked her family. So Z-sun decided that she would not let Gu Yang marry into a family that restricted her own son like that. A mother's worries about her daughter are never superfluous. At that time, she just wished that Gu Yang would always be a slow-growing child, so that she could hold her, take care of her every day. But in real life, she always had to be far away from her daughter, because Gu Yang had to go to college. No matter how much she cooked, only the two of them couldn't eat all of this. But luckily, Gu Yang felt Z-sun's love. One day, she also took a vacation to go home and visit her parents. This made the couple, who were usually bored because they had no one to talk to, suddenly happy again. Every meal was served to Gu Yang like a princess, without missing anything. Perhaps the greatest joy and happiness for the couple right now was to see their daughter living peacefully and happily. But the two were even happier when, after the times of worrying and taking care of their daughter so hard, the eldest child, who they took care of every day, finally noticed and cared about her parents. After her vacation, Gu Yang gave Z-sun a poetry notebook, and Guan-seek received a bottle of hand cream because his hands were very calloused. And one day at the fish shop, Z-sun's sister-in-law also appeared and introduced her to some heated blankets. The aunt nearby saw at a glance that her sister-in-law came here just to do multi-level marketing to Z-sun. She didn't care about her family. She hadn't been to see her sister-in-law for long when her plan was exposed, and her sister-in-law could only sadly take her goods home. But Z-sun also bought a heated blanket as a way to support her pitiful sister-in-law. She also didn't forget to tell her to bring one home for her mother. Mom also has back pain. After hearing these words, she also asked Guan-seek to bring the heated blanket to her mother. Seeing his son come here, she told Guan-seek to spread the blanket and then go home quickly, but Guan-seek refused. It had been a long time since he had come back to this house, so he also decided to check on his mother. But for a long time, she had considered raising dogs to be better than looking at the face of this son, who abandoned his mother for his wife. Even a bribed referee wouldn't lean all the way to one side, like Guan-seek. Remembering what his daughter had said to him, Guan-seek applied it and said, "Even if I could trade the First Lady of Korea to be my mother, I wouldn't." Who knew he would be told by his mother that even if the First Lady of Korea offered, she wouldn't want a son who abandoned his mother like Guan-seek. A son who only knows his wife is not something any mother-in-law can be happy about. To comfort his mother, Guan-seek said, "If you have such a bastard son, then make him work." Although she was sharp-tongued, just seeing her children alive and well, she also felt that Guan-seek was very filial. She understood the feeling of losing parents, but didn't understand losing a child. But she was also sure that her child was still alive, was also the happiest thing for her right now. On Zae-sun's grandmother's side of the family, everyone was celebrating her birthday. No one knew which one. You could only see that her face could be close to death at any time. Even though the family called, spoke, Zae-sun's grandmother didn't have much reaction until Zae-sun arrived. Seeing Zae-sun keep calling her, everyone said that now her grandmother had lost consciousness. She couldn't recognize anything anymore. But a call of Guan-rai's daughter made the whole room silent. Her grandmother hadn't forgotten Zae-sun, the child of her deceased eldest son. Even if she forgot everyone else, she could never forget the granddaughter of her deceased son, the most unfortunate one in the family. When she received Zae-sun's gift, it made her feel so happy. It was also at that moment that she was satisfied and fulfilled her daughter-in-law's last wish. Now she was also ready to go up to heaven, there to meet her son again. Everyone will eventually have to leave. No one can exist forever in the world. Sitting in front of her grandmother's grave, Zae-sun said to Guan-seek, "If one day we leave, we will go together. But flowers wither and then bloom again." The day had come for Zae-sun's son to be discharged from the military. The couple prepared a lot of food and happily welcomed Unman back, but he didn't come alone. Following Unman was the daughter of the village head with a pregnant belly. Unman introduced to his father, and Hyun-suk's belly was a single shot, which meant she got pregnant after sleeping together once. It can't be said that the son was any different from his father back then. Before Gyu-young found true love, her younger brother jumped the gun, got married to his girlfriend, and had a baby boy. The real problem is, their son is married and just had a kid, but he doesn't have a steady job. They're all crammed into a small house, with Zae-sun and Guan-seek, who are worried about their son's future. But their son turns his nose up at hard jobs with low pay, and just dreams of making it big to earn a lot of money. He even uses Guan-seek as a bad example, saying he definitely doesn't want to end up like his dad, taking the family to a restaurant but not ordering much, because they don't have a lot of money. The two of them got into a fight. Hyun-suk, who just had a baby, got tired after holding the baby for a little while. So Zae-sun finally stepped in and took the baby downstairs. Zae-sun noticed Hyun-suk's mother was secretly watching the baby from a distance, so she carried the baby over for her to meet her grandchild. Hyun-suk's mother never looked down on her awkward son-in-law. On the contrary, she was happy that her daughter married Guan-seek's son. Everyone says sons take after their fathers, and Guan-seek is known for being devoted to his wife. She believed her daughter would also be loved by her husband. Zae-sun also has a daughter, and she assured her in-laws that she wouldn't blame Hyun-suk for not knowing how to do things, and wouldn't let Hyun-suk suffer any unfair treatment in her husband's house. Her younger brother's marriage was settled, and next up was Gyu-young's turn. In 1997, South Korea went through a financial crisis. Big and small companies went bankrupt, and the unemployment rate soared. Gyu-young was also struggling between finding a job and getting laid off. The movie theater where Gyu-young used to work didn't escape the hard times either. She was on the bus when she saw the announcement that the theater would close in December, and she suddenly felt like going to see one last movie there. Jong-bam also came. He entered the theater after the movie had started, and sat a few rows behind Gyu-young. The two of them didn't notice each other. When the movie ended, the owner asked Jong-bam if he had seen Gyu-young. He had seen Gyu-young come to the movie, and intentionally arranged for them to sit close to each other. Jong-bam realized he had missed something. He chased after Gyu-young out of the theater, and saw her get on a bus. He ran as fast as he could, took a shortcut, and finally caught up with the bus carrying Gyu-young. The bus was very crowded. Zhang Bam stood at the front of the bus, always watching Gu Yong, who was dozing off and gradually moving closer to him. As passengers gradually got off the bus, Zhang Bam sat down in the seat in front of Gu Yong, waiting for her to wake up. After not seeing each other for years, the two of them went to a small diner to catch up. Zhang Bam got straight to the point, admitting that he had been going to the movie theater every day, hoping to run into Gu Yong again. After they broke up, he always thought about Gu Yong. After drinking a few bottles of alcohol, Gu Yong was a little tipsy and accidentally dropped a bottle on the ground. Zhang Bam immediately bent down to pick up the broken pieces, worried that Gu Yong would get hurt, and then checked Gu Yong's hands to see if she was okay. Seeing the guy in front of her caring for her like a father, Gu Yong agreed to go out with him. After dating for a while, when it was time to think about marriage, Gu Yong took her boyfriend home to meet her father. Guan-seek's future son-in-law went to the sea, but unexpectedly, Zhang Bam got terribly seasick. He fell to the ground vomiting, feeling weak and having a hard time standing up. Guan-seek didn't like that Zhang Bam was weak like a chicken, and his face clearly showed his disdain. Meeting the future father-in-law, drinking alcohol was also part of the test. After spending a day together, Guan-seek felt like he understood. Zhang Bam was clumsy, didn't know how to say nice things, got seasick, and also had a low alcohol tolerance. Zhang Bam's face was already flushed red, and he was a little unsteady on his feet. Even so, his eyes were always on Gu Yong. When he saw Gu Yong go to the restroom, he worried that it was cold and dark outside, and that Gu Yong would fall or get hurt. Today on the boat, Guan-seek also noticed that Zhang Bam always followed closely behind Gu Yong, protecting her, making sure she was always within his sight. Now too, Zhang Bam put his jacket around Gu Yong, pulling her away from the broken bottles lying on the ground. Gu Yong took the opportunity to remind Zhang Bam that he needed to be more relaxed and try to win her father over. If Guan-seek didn't approve, she wouldn't marry Zhang Bam. Hearing this, Zhang Bam became determined. As soon as he walked into the house, he flashed a bright smile and acted cute with Guan-seek, asking to peel shrimp for him. Zi-sun, who was inside, saw everything. She realized that Zhang Bam really loved her daughter. Both she and her husband agreed to let their daughter marry him. But most importantly, Zhang Bam's mother also prepared gifts for the two of them, and wrote on the card that she really liked Gu Yong. That one sentence was enough to make Zi-sun happy all night. Her daughter is beautiful and has a good personality. How could any older person not like Gu Yong? With the approval of both families, Gu Yong held her wedding soon after. She held Guan-seek's hand as she walked down the aisle. From childhood, the sentence Guan-seek said to his daughter the most was, "No matter what happens, don't try to endure it alone. Just come find your dad." In this situation, that sentence became the catalyst for tears. When Gu Yong was little, her dad would often feed her and tell her that if it wasn't good, she could spit it out at any time. When Gu Yong reached school age, Guan-seek told his daughter that if she didn't like school, she could just come home. The same was true when running. Guan-seek told his daughter not to try too hard, but just to run back to him. Gu Yong grew up with these words, filled with a sense of security, knowing that her dad would be a strong support for her. Thinking about this, Gu Yong cried uncontrollably, ending the wedding in tears. However, at the same time as embracing happiness, Gu Yong's younger brother encountered a disaster, getting caught up in legal trouble. Her brother single-mindedly wanted to make a lot of money. He was deceived by an acquaintance and became a fall guy. For them, facing the blame from his parents, the son unloaded all of his dissatisfaction. From childhood, his parents loved Gu Yong more. They gave her everything good and often praised her, saying, "My daughter is so good." Compared to his sister, the son never received the same treatment. Over time, the son felt unfairness in his heart. He wanted so badly to make something of himself and prove that he was better than Gu Yong, which is why he was deceived by others and became a fall guy. This was a problem that Zi-sun had worried about when she was young. She couldn't be a perfect mother who took care of everything, and sometimes she was careless. She was afraid that she might inadvertently cause harm to her children. But this time, it wasn't like there was no way to save her son. As long as they paid back all the money that the people who were cheated had lost, her son would be released. Hyun-suk went home to beg her father, but this father was too stingy. Compared to his children, he valued money more and didn't want to help. As for Zi-sun, she went to the mother of the acquaintance who had harmed her son, wanting to find out his whereabouts. That mother deliberately hid information, so Zi-sun got angry, grabbed her hair, and sat on her to beat her up. The people she was with had never seen Zi-sun so feisty, and were all surprised and wide-eyed. After making a scene, Zi-sun took the newly purchased electrical appliances from her shop and even the ring on her hand, as compensation for her family. And Guan-seek went everywhere borrowing money. Having to humble himself and beg others for his children in middle age was truly heartbreaking. Next, Guan-seek sold the first boat he ever owned. The boat held so many memories for the whole family. But to save his son, he felt that giving up anything was worth it. After collecting enough money, his son was released. Compared to the joy of regaining his freedom, the feeling of guilt in his heart was even greater. Maybe parents and children are like this. Children can easily hurt their parents and abandon them. But no matter what, parents always hold their children's hands tightly. Zisun advised her son that Guan-seek had worked hard to support the family and had suffered countless injuries. Even if her son couldn't help his father ease the burden, he should at least not say things that would hurt his father. Losing his fishing boat, Guan-seek could no longer continue to earn money. Zisun, who once dreamed of a wealthy life, began working on cleaning squid for customers at the market. She had to stand all day at the market, her face flushed red from the cold. Besides Zisun, her son also wanted to help the family reduce the burden. Every day, as soon as it got dark, the son would find all sorts of excuses to go out. And Hyun-suk had already told Guan-seek about what her husband was doing. It turned out that the son was working a side job in the evening. Because he couldn't find anything else to do, the only thing he could do was go out every night to sell glutinous rice cakes and buckwheat jelly, selling for 6 to 7 hours. The daughter-in-law felt bad for her husband and begged Guan-seek to temporarily support the whole family of 3. Guan-seek didn't soften at all. As the head of the family, it was right for him to endure hardship. Guan-seek said that, but in his heart, he still cared about his son. Until one day, the son left behind an envelope containing money and quietly left. The whole family worried that the son was thinking of doing something drastic. Hyun-suk called her father, begging him to help find her husband, or else she wouldn't be able to live. Zisun received news that her son seemed to have boarded a deep-sea fishing boat. The whole family rushed to the pier. The nightmare of losing her youngest son years ago came back, and Zisun couldn't accept losing another beloved child. When Guan-seek arrived at the communication room at the pier, the boats had already set sail. He asked the captain to turn back and promised to pay the fuel costs. The father-in-law snatched the device from his hand and promised to pay double the fuel costs. The captain's eyes lit up at the sight of the money, and he turned the ship around. Guan-seek scolded his son when he returned, asking who does such dangerous fishing work. It's very likely to have an accident, drown, get crushed by the equipment, or even have your hand cut off. Guan-seek was experienced and understood the dangers of fishing. He could take risks for the happiness of his family, but he absolutely wouldn't allow his son to follow his path. His son cried and told his dad that every time he sold rice cakes, customers would tell him to treat Guan-seek well. So many people said it, the son realized something was wrong, and he finally understood the whole story. It turned out that Guan-seek and his father-in-law had been secretly helping him. The truth was exactly that. Earlier, Guan-seek had taken his grandson to meet the father-in-law, who wasn't loved by his wife and children. Seeing the adorable child, the father-in-law's heart melted. Guan-seek advised him not to be so bossy at home all the time, or he would eventually be alienated by everyone. The father-in-law also wanted to improve his relationship with his daughter, so he agreed to Guan-seek's proposal, giving money to the people in the neighborhood and inviting them to buy from his son. Zisun arrived late, and as soon as she arrived, she hit her son. She almost lost him. Zisun tearfully apologized to her son, saying that it was all because of her favoritism that her son felt unfairness. After this incident, the son was brought home safely. Guan-seek found his son a job that paid enough to live on. Yu-yong came home to visit her mother. When she left, she rarely took so much fruit. Zisun noticed that her daughter seemed to be having financial difficulties. After she asked about it, she learned that Yu-yong had quit her job and started a business, and had poured all her money into it. Before Zisun could scold her daughter, she saw her son bandaging his frostbitten fingers. She had reminded her son many times to wear gloves when handling frozen ice. Zisun was angry that her children didn't listen to her and kept causing trouble for the family, especially Gu-young, starting a business at her age. She should be having kids quickly. Her mother's words ignited Gu-young's anger. She didn't want her children to live a poor life like she did, so she chose to start a business. She wasn't as lucky as her younger brother, who had such a loving father. Gu-young's words made Guan-seek sadly return to his room. Stable his whole life, this time for his children, he decided to go big and make a lot of money. Quickly, Guan-seek sold the family's only vegetable garden and mortgaged a large sum of money to buy a shop in a desolate place. The couple, along with the fishing ladies, went to see the shop. Guan-seek told everyone that the broker said a golf course would be built here, and it would soon be incredibly lively. with lots of customers. Soon, everyone arrived at a desolate commercial area, standing in the middle of nowhere. Ji-sun and Guan-seek renovated the shop, looking forward to prosperity after the golf course opened. This was the first time the couple had taken such a big risk. If the shop had no customers, they would have to sell their apartment to pay off their debts. Guan-seek was curious why Ji-sun had so easily agreed to him buying the shop. Ji-sun smiled, saying that when Guan-seek said he wanted to buy the shop, his expression was exactly the same as when they ran away together 30 years ago. So she agreed without hesitation. The two looked up at the empty shop in front of them, unaware that unforeseen difficulties were about to come. That night, Unmon found out that the broker who sold the shop to Guan-seek had run away, and the vegetable garden that Guan-seek had sold was used to build a restaurant, and its value plummeted. That meant that Guan-seek had been scammed by a fraudulent corporation. The son cursed his useless father, saying that he was too old to be doing such stupid things. If the vegetable garden was still there would have been money for his daughter to study abroad. Hearing this, Ji-sun angrily scolded her son for being ungrateful. The vegetable garden was Guan-seek's property, so he could do whatever he wanted with it. If it wasn't for wanting to give his children a better life, he wouldn't have risked his entire life on this gamble. Guan-seek had never lived for himself a single day. He was the last person who should be scolded. Gu-yong heard the news that her father had been scammed and ran around everywhere borrowing money to help her father pay off his debts. She complained to her mother that from childhood, she had always educated her to be the pillar of the family, which made her feel suffocated. She blamed her mother for sacrificing too much, sending her to study abroad, which made her always carry a burden of guilt. Whenever she thought about her parents doing everything they could and putting all their hopes on her, she felt pressured. After saying this, she burst into tears and angrily left home. Ji-sun looked at the vegetables that Gu-yong didn't take with her, with a heart full of grievances that she didn't know where to vent. She looked up at the photo stuck on the refrigerator and her daughter's apologies, and tears couldn't help but fall. She blamed herself for being useless, for letting her daughter run around borrowing money while pregnant, just like she was back then, powerless. A few months later, the day came for Gu-yong to give birth. Unfortunately, Gu-yong had prolonged labor for more than 12 hours, but the baby still wouldn't come out. Zhang Bam anxiously called Ji-sun, telling her to come because Gu-yong was having a difficult birth and kept asking to see her. Ji-sun rushed to the hospital and successfully helped her daughter give birth to the baby. After this experience, Gu-yong realized that her mother was only 18 years old back then, giving birth to her in such terrible circumstances, and must have suffered even more. She hugged her mother and cried. Ji-sun took care of her daughter's food and drink. Guan-seek made the bed for her, and Zhang Bam kept talking about the baby's condition, even laughing and saying that Gu-yong was like a weak princess. Guan-seek wasn't happy and scolded him not to forget his place. Winter passed and spring came. Guan-seek finally decided to open a restaurant. Although the location of the shop was far from the city, he could deliver food, relying on his hard work and dedication to develop the restaurant. Soon, Guan-seek and his son rode a small motorcycle, distributing flyers introducing dried squid to every house. After years of hardship, God finally began to take care of Guan-seek's family. In 2002, the Korea-Japan World Cup was very lively, and people gathered to watch soccer. Guan-seek's home delivered dried squid became an indispensable snack for soccer viewers. Thanks to this boost, Guan-seek's restaurant business quickly prospered. Not only that, but entering the 20th century, Jeju Island also became a popular tourist and filming location, and the restaurant welcomed wave after wave of tourists, and even celebrities. A top Korean actress made a special trip to Guan-seek's restaurant and filmed a commercial. This actress had a connection with Guan-seek. A few years ago, the actress was caught in a scandal. In despair, she boarded Guan-seek's fishing boat and wanted to jump into the sea and end her life, but was rescued by Guan-seek. When the ambulance arrived, Guan-seek thoughtfully put his jacket over her face to prevent others from recognizing her. The actress had always been grateful to Guan-seek and wanted to repay him, but Guan-seek always refused. This time, she finally found an opportunity. After being promoted by the actress, the restaurant's business became incredibly prosperous. Ji-sun had never been so happy. Now that the family's financial situation was better, she decided to fulfill her childhood dream and start writing poetry. But before writing poetry, she still had to take care of her beloved daughter. Ji-sun received a call for help from her daughter. Her granddaughter was not listening and broke a rice bowl. Ji-sun helped her daughter take care of her child and also clean the house spotless. Gu-yong came home from work and blamed her mother for working too hard, which made her feel guilty. Ji-sun knew her daughter was working hard, taking care of her child, She reminded Yu Young not to think of her child as her whole world, and to do whatever she wanted to do without hesitating. If she forced herself to live a life she didn't want, resentment would definitely arise, and she would eventually create pressure for her children. After Zisun said this, she left her daughter deep in thought and returned to Jeju Island. After her mother left, Yu Young talked with Jong Bom about wanting to use the money to buy a piano for their daughter and to take her parents for a comprehensive health checkup. Jong Bom loved his wife and of course nodded in agreement. Guan-seek and Zisun went to the hospital for a health checkup. After a stomach and intestinal endoscopy, Zisun woke up first. She noticed that Guan-seek, while dreaming, kept calling out the name of their youngest son and shedding tears. Zisun then realized that Guan-seek, just like her, had buried the pain of losing their youngest son in his heart and had never truly recovered. One day before the memorial day of their youngest son, Zisun went to the grave to find Guan-seek. She realized that every time the memorial day of their youngest son came, Guan-seek was afraid of seeing Zisun heartbroken. To avoid her, he always visited the grave one day early. But Zisun didn't know that every time Zisun visited the grave of their youngest son, Guan-seek secretly followed her, fearing that she might do something drastic and jump into the sea. The health checkup results showed that Guan-seek had health problems. For a long time, Guan-seek had suffered from arthritis. This health checkup revealed that he had multiple myeloma, a type of blood cancer similar to leukemia. Now the condition had progressed to kidney failure, and he had to receive treatment immediately. Zisun and Yu Young could hardly accept this shocking news, and hurriedly arranged for Guan-seek to undergo chemotherapy. In the blink of an eye, spring arrived. Zisun supported Guan-seek as he went for chemotherapy. Guan-seek again blamed her for always looking at his feet, instead of looking at the blooming flowers in front of her. Zisun held her husband's hand, her eyes red. Guan-seek picked a flower that had fallen on her head, worrying about how lonely his wife would be in the future. After chemotherapy, Zisun was busy helping her husband hold the examination ticket and register. But Zisun was old and unfamiliar with the high-tech medical system, so she kept making mistakes and getting scolded by the staff. Guan-seek couldn't bear to see his wife being bullied, so he stepped forward to defend Zisun. When Yu Young arrived, she became angry with her daughter, ordering her to accompany her to the hospital from now on. Zisun comforted her daughter. Guan-seek stood by and watched an elderly woman who had missed her appointment number, thinking that Zisun would also be lonely and helpless like that in the future, and he felt extremely sad. That night, he sent his wife home so his daughter could come and sleep with him. All night, he told Yu Young about Zisun's life from when she was young. When he mentioned the two running away, he recalled the 3 things he had promised Zisun years ago: to help Zisun become a poet, to send her to college, and to go to Seoul. Only when he was about to pass away did he fulfill Zisun's dream of writing poetry. Finally, Guan-seek asked his daughter to take care of Zisun after he passed away. He knew that he would be failing his daughter by asking her to take care of his wife, but just thinking about Zisun being lonely and alone made him so sad that he couldn't sleep. In his final moments, Guan-seek wanted to go home to live. Arriving home, his son bowed his head and wiped the sofa that he had bought for his father. Opening his eyes and seeing his father's thin body, he couldn't help but burst into tears. He remembered back then, because his birthday and the memorial day of his younger brother coincided. His grandmother didn't allow him to celebrate his birthday. Guan-seek secretly took him out to eat black bean noodles and bought him toys for his birthday. Like that, every year his dad secretly took him out to celebrate his birthday. Unman had actually known for a long time that her parents also loved him, but because his sister was spoiled too much, he had deliberately forgotten the love his parents had for him. As the days went by, Yu Young's company became successful. In her speech, she narrated the initial intention when establishing the online trading company, wanting to help those who have dreams but don't have the opportunity to go to school. Like her mother, to be able to study on her own. Zisun was deeply touched after listening. Good news followed. Zisun's poetry collection was published. She joyfully told Guan-seek the news. She had fulfilled her promise to herself. Guan-seek hugged his wife's poetry collection and couldn't hold back his tears, excitedly picking up Zisun and spinning her around. In the evening, Zisun begged Guan-seek not to leave her, even if it was just to stay for one more happy year. But Guan-seek was also powerless. He told Zisun to promise him not to cry at his funeral. He only needed to see his wife heartbroken to have his heart shattered. Guan-seek gently comforted Zisun, who was crying like rain, just like he had always comforted and encouraged her. It was precisely because of Guan-seek that Zisun was able to feel like she was living in heaven, no matter how hard the days were. Guan-seek's health continued to weaken. and he finally couldn't hold on any longer and had to be hospitalized. Zisun looked at Guan-seek, struggling to breathe through the glass. They had been husband and wife for so many years that they knew what the other was thinking without needing to say anything. Zisun thanked this life for having Guan-seek by her side. She had obtained a life of unparalleled happiness. Guan-seek used his hand to signal his wife to pull down her mask. In his final moments, he wanted to engrave the image of Zisun in his mind. As his age increased, Guan-seek's death seemed to awaken something in the father-in-law. He understood the importance of a partner, an old couple, when they get old, having someone to be with, while their children are busy with their own lives. If his wife was unwell in the future, he would be by her side to take good care of her. Losing her father, Yu-yong received a savings book that Guan-seek had left for her. Inside was the money that her daughter had given him each time. Compared to spending their children's money, the hearts of the children were enough to make their parents happy for a long time. As for Zisun, she lived in the small house that the two of them shared. She often felt that Guan-seek was still there, present in every corner of the house. By her side, Zisun was suddenly moved, opened the notebook, and wrote lines of poetry. Gradually, the content in the notebook increased. The grandchildren also gradually grew up. Yu-yong photographed her mother's poetry collection and sent it to the editor-in-chief of the publishing house. The editor-in-chief looked through the poetry collection and was moved to tears. The editor-in-chief also didn't know what was happening to him. Tears just kept flowing non-stop. After reading through the entire book, the editor-in-chief gave his assessment. He felt proud of the author of the poetry collection. Not long after, Zisun's poetry collection was published. Officially debuting, she refused to live with her children and lived alone in the small house from years ago. Her only wish was to be able to see Yu-yong more often before she passed away. Looking back on her life, she had so many happy memories. The most precious memories in her life were all written in the poetry collection. Because of having the poetry collection as a companion, Zisun lived very happily every day. The back of the poetry collection printed a photo of her and Guan-seek when they were young. Zisun remembered that, from the age of 9, Guan-seek had always been by her side. The two had experienced so many ups and downs and hardships together. If it weren't for Guan-seek bringing her a happy life, this poetry collection would not have been born. Guan-seek's love was the best nourishment in her life. This is where the story ends. Don't forget to like and subscribe to not miss out on more amazing videos. For now, goodbye, and until next time.